Quorum present, I'll call to order the February 12th meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission. First item on the agenda is public comment. Any member of the public that's here today may address the Historic Landmarks Commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject that is within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on today's agenda. Seeing no public, I'll close public comment and go to approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of January 29th, 2014. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Murray, second by Winnick. Under discussion, are there any additions, corrections, or clarifications to the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I have a correction.
Commissioner Mahan.
Yes, on page 13. This is 1003 Santa Barbara Street. On item number 7, it says the linear windows on the lot line would work well, but not on other walls. I think it was just the opposite. The linear, well, that's not quite true. The linear window on the lot line will work well, except for that the design is not acceptable yet on the lot line. And then we didn't see any reason for linear windows on other walls that weren't on the lot line. So it's not quite.
So that should read then the linear walls on the lot line.
I don't like the words work well because we didn't like the way they were. Linear windows. We recognize that we have to have, that they want to have some kind of windows on the lot line.
How about they work, but they need more detailing?
Yeah, well, the design isn't acceptable yet.
Okay.
And but not on the other walls. Those are the glass block things that they used. And then another item on item 7, the first sentence, the handrails, guardrails need to be more consistent with the style of the building. I think that the idea was that it was the style and the period of the building. In other words, it's a 1920s type building, so it's the period, the style and period of the building.
Yep, that was easy.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, excuse me, before you proceed.
Yes.
On the first comment then that Commissioner Mahan had.
Mr. Mahan, would you like to repeat the language?
Well, yeah, I think we want to drop the word well, that it works well. The linear windows on the lot line, we recognize that they're necessary, but the design is not yet acceptable. Is that okay?
Does that clarify it for you,
That's
Mr.
fine.
Chair?
Yeah.
And then comma, but not on the other walls. They're not acceptable on the other walls.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Murray.
Yes, on page 12, under the Eats Beats 9 properties, I thought that one, it says Eats Beats 2 properties. Maybe you would just strike that title because those 2 are not in the East Beach and just say like miscellaneous. Yeah. And then I also have to abstain on that number 2, 420 East Anapamu. Abstain from voting.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's it.
Anyone else?
Otherwise,
All right, then I'll open public comment. Mr. DeForest?
No.
He turned in public comment, so we need to take that under discussion.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
regarding.
Yes, it's on the minutes.
Okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
it's on the minutes, and it's Commissioner Murray caught what was bothering me. But should that be titled something else?
Can you give us the page, Mr. DeForest?
Those 2 additional properties.
Mr. DeForest,
Page 12.
the page?
What? On
Page
page
number
12.
12.
Thank you.
It now reads
It's right here.
East Beach properties, which obviously Coda and Anapamu are not. So should it say additional properties, or do you want to head that, or do you just consider changing the heading there?
Yeah.
I think we already took care of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Miscellaneous.
So close
Thank you.
public comment and put it to the vote. All in favor of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
We have Commissioner Orias abstaining.
Thank you for the minutes. They were excellent.
Okay.
Next is the consent calendar. Ms. Gantz.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We only had 2 items today. Item A at 15 West Pedregosa Street was granted project design approval and final approval as noted. And item D at 1746 Prospect Avenue was granted final approval final approval with a condition. And those were both reviewed by Chair Suding.
Okay. I have a motion to ratify the consent calendar.
So moved.
Motion by Winnick, second by Mahan. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? Or opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Okay.
Next is announcements. Ms. Gantz.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Drury will be absent from today's meeting. Item 7 at 433 East Cabrillo Boulevard has been postponed 6 weeks at the applicant's request. And item 11 at 25 East Mason Street, which is the last item on the agenda, has been postponed 2 weeks at the applicant's request. And I'm thinking that half an hour that we would have allotted for 433 East Cabrillo will be used up quite well by the library item before it. At the Tuesday, March 4th City Council meeting, there will be a discussion about how average unit density program projects are processed. And then also on Thursday, March 6th, Chair Suding has been asked to attend a joint Planning Commission City Council meeting with the following potential agenda topics: zoning ordinance update, local coastal program grant and update, environmental resources element, review of other long-term planning projects including average unit density, shelter ordinance, air quality ordinance, historic resources work program, design review special projects, major development review projects, and zoning information reports.
Sounds like too much for me to do.
It's a lot.
Potential agenda items.
March 6th, you said? I did get the email.
That's Thursday, March 6th, and
Thank
then the
you.
City Council was Tuesday, March 4th
Yeah.
for the AUD. And then staff will be sending HLC members a link to the council agenda reports in advance of both meetings. And that's all I have.
Okay, any other announcements, commissioners? Commissioner Rios?
As a future agenda item, could we have a report on all the fence that was around the...
Garden Street Academy?
Yes. Could we have a report on what has happened about that?
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
I won't be at the next meeting. Might as well launch it now.
So you're not going to be here on the 26th, is that?
Yep. Correct.
Anyone else? Okay, how about subcommittee reports? Anybody meeting the subcommittees? No? Okay, then we'll move on to the first item of the agenda, which is a miscellaneous action item. It's a resolution of intention for 1105 Chapala Street. Ms. Hernandez.
Yes, you have 3 resolutions of intent to set hearing dates for landmark designations. The subcommittee and I have been meeting on this since July, and we have the final reports ready. And for the first one, which is 1105 Chapala Street, staff does recommend that the Historic Landmarks Commission hold a public hearing on March 12, 2014 to consider recommendation for designation of the Santa Barbara Club as a city landmark. We have had contact with the Santa Barbara Club. They've sent, the board has sent us a letter of support,
Great.
and they also agree with the date.
Okay. Do I have any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it to the commission for discussion or questions. Anybody? Okay, somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to, I know what I was supposed to say, sorry, to adopt the resolution of intent for the public hearing.
Perfect. Okay, we had a motion by Winnick, a second by Mahan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is also a miscellaneous action item for resolution of intention for 16 East Carrillo Street. Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the Masonic Temple at 16 East Carrillo Street. Staff also does recommend that the Historic Landmark Commission adopt a resolution to recommend or to have a public hearing for recommendation for designation of the Masonic Temple. We have sent them letters and a certified letter, but I have not heard anything from
Okay.
them.
Seems we have some members of the public that want to speak, so I'll open public comment. First one is Von Jorgensen, or John Jorgensen. John, actually. John, okay. will be followed by Scott Wen. So, Mr. Wen, if you could please come up to the front row. You come right here. I'll turn on the microphone for you, and you have a seat right there. Please speak right into the microphone.
No?
Yeah.
Hi, guys. My name's John Jorgensen. I am the secretary for the Temple Board
Welcome.
for our Masonic Lodge. Of course, we've been around for 1925, the building. We've maintained it. In the condition that you see today is pretty much the condition of the building you're going to always see. Because of masonry, I like to say that we have been sort of adhering to a landmark commission as old as time itself, which is masonry itself. All of our buildings are structured and built and designed to a very, very strict design layout, format, the way it's positioned, everything. So we, as a Temple Board, maintain the building to that high degree. I mean, a very high degree, which is we have to answer to the Masons and to masonry itself because of how we operate and work as an organization. The building itself is maintained with the best labor we can find, the best craft people we can find. If you take a look, it's got a very subtle look on the front of the building. A lot of people walk by it and they don't even know it's there, right? There's two things in masonry: strength and ornament or beauty. We build the building strong, plumb and square, and we also build it with ornament or beauty. So as a Mason, you can see that, and I think other people can probably see it also. So in terms of the Landmarks Commission concern about the maintenance of the building, we are really answering to almost to a higher regard of on the maintenance of the building. So the building can't change. It cannot change. So if Landmarks is concerned about that, that's just not going to happen. That's because of the way we're structured as an organization. To have a Landmarks designation I could say we actually answer to a much higher degree. I hate to say it that way, but that's how we feel. That our job is to maintain that building to the highest degree we possibly can, and nothing changes on the building whatsoever. So, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Wen, followed by Daniel Hughes. Mr. Hughes, if you please come up to the front row. Mr. Wen, please have a seat and go ahead and make your comments.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Scott Wen's representing Scottish Rite Masonry, York Rite Masonry, and the Santa Barbara Blue Lodge. I'm a fourth-generation Mason in this particular building. We would ask that you would table this motion and not bring it back. We maintain the building to a very high degree, as you've already heard. I've been on the Temple Board. I'm also treasurer of Scottish Rite. We also have a very unique mission statement. And that uniqueness, as Mr. Jorgensen already said, makes it almost impossible for us to change anything within the lodge except for possibly a color within the interior and so forth. We've just gone through a major overhaul of the bathrooms and so forth, put in very nice marble, redid all of the plumbing inside, did some earthquake upgrades and so forth. We don't need the landmarks designation. We don't want the landmarks designation. And we'd ask you that you would permanently table this issue and not bring it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wen. Mr. Hughes. That's the last of the public speaker slips I have for this item, so after Mr. Hughes, I will close it.
I would just like to second Mr. Wentz's request that this be tabled permanently. We're not interested in getting historical landmark designation. We have proper finances to upkeep our building, and we have income as well, and we do not need any tax breaks or anything of the sort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. I will close public comment and look to Ms. Hernandez for some additional comments. How has this been dealt with other
Well,
similar.
I had sent them 2 letters and hadn't heard anything, so I hadn't had an opportunity to talk to them. But it really is a recognition of the maintenance and that you have done. It's recognizing this is an important landmark in our downtown neighborhood, and you would be joining the elite buildings built in the 1920s that dot our downtown, and it's one of the few that hasn't been designated a landmark. We consider it bestowing an honor, and that was the reason the subcommittee chose these buildings and chooses the very highly maintained buildings that retain all their integrity for us to recognize to be our landmarks.
Essentially, it also adds another level of protection for the
It
building.
does. It would add another. And
I think I'll just go around the commission. Anybody have any questions?
Other than it is an honor, and we're commending
That would be
you.
a comment. So
We're commending you for a fine building, an exemplary building, a lovely building, beautifully maintained over the years.
Question.
So it's nothing about your maintenance.
Okay. Ms. Arias?
Have other buildings used by the Masons been established as landmarks across the United States?
I've designated 3. 1 in New Orleans and 2 in Denver. So.
Yeah, I know that there are, because my father was a Mason, second degree Mason.
Because they all have
Knight
such
Templar.
they all have such high degree of architecture that often they're designated.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, I have a question to staff. Just precedent. Have we had cases where we've had buildings that have been impeccably maintained, where the owner has actually come to us and said we don't want to be designated? It seems it's unusual. Normally, it's like, I mean, for me, it doesn't look like a hardship. So I'm kind of wondering if this has happened before, and how did we handle it in those instances?
Mr. Limon, did you want to answer that question?
I'm Eddie Limon, senior planner. The longstanding policy of this commission was to try to work to obtain owner's consent for designations. What we discovered after discussing this issue of designation with the city attorney's office is that the owner's consent is not necessary for a landmark designation process. As a matter of fact, we've had 2 recent examples where a property owner was objecting to the designation and council elected to designate the property. The proper appeal mechanism is if this commission does adopt the resolution to recommend council designate it, that the designation question go to council for that decision. Ultimately, they have the right to listen to the concerns of the property owner and choose not to designate. That it is an appeal mechanism built into the designation question.
Not that they would appeal our decision or our recommendation.
No, it would be forwarded to the council
Right.
at the time of the hearing with the objections noted.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Question?
That's my understanding of what we're doing anyway. We're sending this on for a hearing at
council.
City Council.
Ms. Murray?
I just want to say that the landmark status doesn't change anything to the building. What it does is just, it reinforces everything that you're doing. This landmark will continue to be here and you'll continue to be doing. But the landmark status designation is basically just showing this almost like the highest level certification of recognizing what you've been doing since the building was built, the careful way it's done, the careful way you are treating each elements of the building, the way you carefully fix everything. That's what a landmark is. It's like the way we treat the courthouse, the way the Santa Barbara Mission is treated. That's what it is. There is no restriction or anything on your sense. If anything, it's just elevating your work, your mission, your building at the highest level. And so that's why we recommended that it be one of the buildings to be designated. But it's the city council that makes that final approval.
Ms. Arias?
Since they had not had a chance to talk with the historian, you have not talked with him, correct?
No, I sent 2 letters and a copy of the report, and then we can
Perhaps,
discuss.
One of the things that the commission could consider is delaying this for one meeting for there to be conversation so that you can thoroughly understand what this involves and what it doesn't involve. It's not in any way a grabbing by the part of the city. It is a preservation. And having been brought up in a family, I am very familiar with the Masons and all, and what they do. And since other buildings of your orders have also been designated landmarks, it is something that is not unusual to happen. So maybe a delay of one set of meetings for conversation to happen would result in support for this.
Okay, do we have any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes, recently I read in the LA Times about a large Shriner building in Los Angeles that was sold. I don't know the details. I don't remember the details of it, but the building was sold. I think it's important to recognize that this commission has very, very long. We have a very long view, and we don't know what future of owners will do. And so that's why I would support. But I certainly would think it'd be appropriate to delay it for a week. I don't have a problem with that, but I certainly am in support of designation.
Ms. Hernandez?
Just a reminder, this is just a resolution to set the hearing date on the 12th of March. So that's a month from now, before we even have the public hearing.
Yeah, exactly.
But we could table that recommendation
Yes, you
for the
could.
next meeting so that you and the designation subcommittee has a chance to communicate with the Masonic Temple
Yes.
parties.
Mr. Sudi?
Mr. Limon?
I just want to point out that irrespective of these discussions, this commission needs to understand whether or not you'd move forward with consent or not. And so we could return back, but there's a likelihood that consent will still not be granted. So whether you want to proceed, it's really...
It's
I see.
1 month from
Okay,
now.
I get you.
If you feel compelled to not proceed because you would like to get consent, that could be a practice that you can implement.
It almost makes more sense to just go ahead and
Have 1 month.
and recommend the designation, recommend the resolution, the hearing, and then let that flesh itself out between staff and the designation subcommittee within that month time before it goes to council. Do you does the members of the Masonic Temple understand that? Okay. Maybe I didn't say it the best way, but I think it's best if we go ahead and recommend the resolution for intention to hold the public hearing at City Council within a month. During that month's time, the staff, Ms. Hernandez, and the designation subcommittee can communicate with you, discuss with you the intent, what the intent is, and what all the different levels of that designation mean. And then that gets fleshed out or determined at City Council in a month's time.
Mr.
March
Sudi,
12th.
no, that's not what's happening.
Okay.
What's happening?
Should have stopped me sooner.
No, I just want to point out that there's 2 steps to this process. All this commission is doing is advising the community that you intend to hold a public hearing regarding the landmark designation on 12th here to make that recommendation. So what I'm suggesting you do is that's the appropriate time to consider whether you should recommend to City Council. And these individuals can bring forth whatever arguments they can in writing or with public comments to argue for or against the designation. At that time, you would make a decision whether you would forward it to council. And then we would schedule a hearing at council within, I think, 60 days.
Of that March 12th.
Of that March 12th.
Okay.
Thanks for the
Okay. You understand that?
Do you understand?
I do understand it, yeah. I should have been stopped earlier.
Yes.
Correct.
And then you'd also make a case to present to this commission as to why it's not appropriate to forward it to council.
All right, so I'm going to look for a motion then, unless anybody has any other comments.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to adopt the resolution of intention.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Lavoie, a second by Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, the next item on the agenda is another miscellaneous action item, resolution of intention for 1535 Santa Barbara Street. Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, this is the Unitarian Church at 1535 Santa Barbara Street, and staff does recommend that the commission adopt a resolution of intent to hold a public hearing on March 12, 2014, to make a recommendation to City Council for landmark designation of the building.
Okay. I'm going to open public comment. I have no speaker slips for this item, so I'll close public comment. Go to the commission for any questions. Any questions of the commission? Any comments? How about a motion?
Okay. Mr. Chair, make a motion to adopt a resolution of intention to hold a public hearing on 2:05 p.m. on the March 12th also for this item.
I have a motion by Winnick, a second by Sharp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right. Next item is item 4. We are 5 minutes behind. This is a miscellaneous action item for 2024 Grand Avenue. Consideration to add 2024 Grand Avenue as a contributing property to the potential Plaza Bonita Historic District. Ms. Hernandez.
Yes, I gave you a copy of the email the owner sent me that they were not able to find a historian. They consulted with 2 historians that found the building belongs within the district and retains enough integrity to be, but they personally don't feel comfortable with the designation.
Okay. I will open public comment. Seeing no public, I'll close public comment. Go to the commission for questions. Any questions of the commission?
Well, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mahan.
I'll frame this as a question. It concerns me that the owner is not somehow communicated to appropriately, that this is not, as she puts it, cause expense and stress. Are we missing something when we communicate to these owners that this is really a benefit to them? That's my question.
Ms. Hernandez?
I've talked with this owner and sent her information, and I have tried to explain to her that the facts about being the results of being part of a historic district, and that she probably wouldn't see. She sort of thought she would have more fees and more hearings when she came in for review, but I tried to explain this is just a change of review from going, they have fees at the SFDB when you apply, and the consequences, I tried to calm her.
Perhaps, Mr. Mahan, it was just her misunderstanding of Ms. Hernandez, but...
The something else that could be communicated is that this is a 2-story house. If it didn't come to this commission, it would go to the Single Family Design Board for any changes, and they're much tougher than we are. I think. I see Fred Sweeney out there somewhere, and I know he's tough.
Okay. Mr. Lamont.
Hi, Lamont, Senior Planner. I just wanted to point it out that we have had dialogue in the form of neighborhood meetings on all these listings, and we had a packed house here about a month and a half ago where these concerns were voiced by property owners. So we've had sufficient initial notice just for the listing aspect of it. There's going to be other hearings with respect to the actual historic district designation. That also will be before this commission, where you'll hear people's concerns. But what I wanted to convey to the public also is that our intent is to try to put forward some reasonable limits as far as what requires a commission hearing with respect to historic district properties. And I know there's this concern that we might have a higher threshold for any exterior change as opposed to, Mr. Mahan says, Single Family Design Board is really triggered by permitting, things that require a building permit. And I think that's a little bit discomforting for people if they feel that we want to see every exterior change. But we're trying to build in mechanisms in place so they can just consult our historian and have certificate of appropriateness issued without any type of application if we can just get them to agree to do the right thing. So hopefully that'll alleviate some of the concerns. We move forward.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? How about a motion? Ms. Murray?
Yeah, I move to include 2024 Grand Avenue as a contributing property to a potential Plaza Bonita Historic District as was stated before.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Murray, second by Arias. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is Historic Structures Report for 3626 San Remo Drive.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Ms. Hernandez, go ahead.
I just, we already read this letter and looked at the drawings for the concept review for the first round, but the Planning Commission needs an official motion from you accepting the letter, which is something we did not do. So this is just some
Formalization.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll open public comment. I have one speaker slip from Mr. DeForest. Mr. DeForest.
I have a problem with I have a problem with Mrs. Cole's report about the Secretary of Interior's standards. I gather the Planning Commission says if the facade could be restored to its location, otherwise it should be the expansion would have to go to 45 feet. The question is this, it's just terminology that's bothering me. If she indicates in the report reconstruction, and reconstruction refers to, under the Secretary of Interior standards, reconstruction refers to the whole structure, and reconstruction is usually used when buildings no longer exist, or so like the Presidios buildings are reconstruction. Obviously, I gather, as I remember, that this building is not to be demolished and completely built from scratch, but it's just the front facade that needs repair, and that is reconstruction. And it's the word, so the city planning needs to be informed that it is reconstruction, not, I mean, it is that actually it's the facade is being restored, not the whole building is being reconstructed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Ms. Hernandez, please respond.
Yes. You may recall that when we looked at this along with the plans, the building had engineers report that the facade cannot be saved. And the Historic Structures report, the original, this is just the addendum, found that only the front facade and the side were eligible as structures of merit. So they are demoing the building and rebuilding it. They are demoing it and reconstructing it as to match everything exactly, every dimension, every window of the
building?
No, just of the two elevations that were found structure of merit worthy.
That isn't reconstruction under the Secretary of Interior standard, is
Of the significant facades that she
yeah. That isn't quote unquote reconstruction under Secretary of Interior standard.
It is. Partial reconstruction.
Yeah.
They're reconstructing the significant elevations exactly as they are, according to those standards, just those two elevations. The two significant elevations that are there, they're reconstructing.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. I'm going to close public comment and bring it to the Commission for questions. Any questions? Any comments? Ms. Murray, do you have any comments?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Mahan.
I think the word may be replacement. Recently, we replaced the Spirit of the Ocean fountain at the courthouse because it had deteriorated beyond being reconstructed or repaired, and so we took it away and we replaced it. And I think that's really what you're talking about here, is to replace this facade, right? You're replacing it. Replacing it in kind.
Well, the Secretary of Interior standard, there's 4 treatments. We're using the treatment of reconstruction, and they're actually taking every measure and material, window, mullion, door, and reconstructing it to match what's there, because those are significant elevations. So that's why it's the terminology is defined by the Secretary of Interior. So that's why we're using that term.
The other comment is that I think in this
In the footer, the description.
Yeah, the description here, and then it should say facades. We're talking about 2 facades, not just one.
Facades, yes. So on the third line, on the footer,
Third line, first word.
facades, because there are 2 elevations that are being reconstructed. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Winnick,
can I make a motion to accept?
if we're all done with comments.
No.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Winnick.
No, I'd like to make a motion to accept Mrs. Cole's addendum letter to the structural report. For this.
We have a motion by Winnick, a second by Sharp. All in favor?
With the amendation.
Okay, with the amendment, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Of facades, thank you.
Yes, good catch.
Correction.
So is the seconder okay with that amendment?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 6. We are 8 minutes behind. It's concept review continued public hearing for 40 East Anapamoose Street. This is a proposal to upgrade both landscape and hardscape areas in the plaza of the library and around the perimeter of the library and the Faulkner Gallery. The improvements would include approximately 3,200 square feet of additional hardscape, 750 cubic yards of imported fill, a reduction in turf area, and a reduction in total trees from 75 to 56, a new water feature, artwork display areas, lighting, and approximately 4,500 square feet activity space. I will read the motion from the last time which this project was here, and that was November 30th of 2011. We had quite a bit of public comment, as we do today, it looks like. All right, the motion was continued indefinitely with the following comments. Renovation of the library plaza is long overdue. The lack of formality to the Faulkner Gallery is perplexing. The Faulkner Gallery should be celebrated. Original library entrance should not have any added art placed in front of it. Better visibility of the original library entrance is paramount. Pay attention to the balance of opening up the visibility of the original library entrance and the blank walls. Explore visibility of the whole library building. Keep planted and built items in the space low and the sight lines open. Provide a demolition and tree removal plan. Proposed landscape is not compliant with El Pueblo Viejo guidelines and is too contemporary. The majority of the commission would like the applicant to continue to study the retention of the eucalyptus tree. Skyline trees are important in the downtown area. Lighting fixture style should be exemplary for this space. Original Faulkner fountains should be looked at as an element to be re-implemented. Safety of the pool or fountain needs to be considered. The action was made by Boucher. It was seconded by Lavoie, and it passed with an 8-0 motion or vote. Please introduce yourselves for the record and give us a brief presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Suding and members of the Commission. I'm Irene Macias, Library Director.
Welcome.
And I have with me today Doug and Regula Campbell of Campbell & Campbell.
Welcome.
And I'm pleased to come before the Commission again with an updated plan for the Library Plaza project. It's a project that library staff has wanted to do for many years, and we've had quite a lot of comment from library users about the need. And we're thrilled about the opportunity to create a safe and welcoming and accessible space, one that has the flexibility to be a quiet place for contemplation or a place suitable for library programming, community events, and celebrations. A little background. In 2010, the redevelopment agency provided funding for concept and preliminary design for the plaza improvements, and Campbell & Campbell were hired in March of 2011. We went to the Street Tree Advisory Committee, to the Parks and Recreation Committee, and then here to HLC in November of 2011. And shortly after that, the dissolution of the redevelopment agency meant we had to stop the project. And in the meantime, the Santa Barbara Museum of Art shared with us their plans for a museum renovation project. And because we have many common goals and needs, we decided that we would coordinate on the development of a design. So in June, and fortunately, funding came back. City Council approved funding to continue the design. So in June, we began a coordination process with the Museum of Art. And you'll see that the design that the changes that we've made to the design do incorporate many of their needs and desires and really make it a wonderful space for community use. And so with that expanded scope, we returned to the Street Tree Advisory Committee with our updated plan in January of this year. They endorsed the plan and offered some comments. We also went to the Parks and Recreation Committee, received favorable comments there. And so we're back before your commission, and we're really thrilled to have you take a look at the plan, and we're anxious to hear your comments. And so Regula Campbell will take you through the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Macias.
I'm Regula Campbell, Principal Architect with Campbell & Campbell, and I'll be taking you through the PowerPoint presentation.
I get the license.
So the project, as Irene has said, started in 2011 with a much narrower scope of work and project site. It's essentially the area between the library and Faulkner Gallery and Anapamu Street, bordered by the Santa Barbara Museum of Art on the west. This project really lies at the heart of Santa Barbara's cultural and commercial district. This is a view taken from the Granada building looking to the southeast. Project description and purpose, the program of the plaza is really to create a safe and inviting main entrance to the library and Faulkner Gallery and a public gathering space for library and Faulkner Gallery events and activities. There are two landmark buildings on the site. One is the historic library itself, designed by Wilson and Hornbostel, completed in 1917. As you can see, the slides along the top of the photos on the top of the slide are early photographs. The ones at the bottom are contemporary photographs taken from similar locations. You can see how the building was damaged in the 1925 earthquake and remodeled by Carlton Winslow, completed in about 1926. And of course, the historic Faulkner Gallery. Again, early photos on the top of the slide and contemporary photographs taken from about the same place on the lower portion of this slide. We started the project with public participation workshops, hoping to get as much input from the public as possible. We held one workshop on a Saturday and one on a weekday evening to try to garner as a wide a view and wide group of the public as possible. We started the workshops by going out on the site with notebooks that described scenarios that would promote design thinking on the part of the public in looking at this project, looking at constraints, opportunities at the site, existing conditions, etc. We also looked at the urban context of the project. So we looked, and the and the surrounds. So we looked at public transit access to the site. Here you can see on the top photo shows the bus stop along Anapamu Street adjacent to this site, and the bus stop along Anacapa Street. We also looked at access from public parking garages, the Granada Garage across the street of Anapamu, and of course the library parking garage directly south across Library Avenue. We looked at bicycle transit to the side and bicycle parking. You can see on the upper left-hand slide the existing bicycle parking on this 2011 site. And to the right, you can see the piled bikes at the impromptuly piled at the door, the northern door of the library in Faulkner. Then adjacent parking at the library parking structure on the lower left, and on the right, the bike parking in Library Avenue Plaza. We looked at the pedestrian access through the site adjacent to the site, the pedestrian Paseo system in downtown Santa Barbara. You see at the top photo on the right shows the Paseo that was within the project boundary at the time in 2011, the Paseo between the Faulkner and Library and Museum of Art. And then on the lower slide, you can see Library Avenue from Library Avenue Plaza up along the south side of the library and Faulkner. And you see the connecting Paseo that goes from Figueroa Street to Library Avenue past the parking structure and provides access from the parking structure to the library. We also looked at the existing open spaces. The existing Library Avenue Plaza, which is a working plaza too. It is for loading and unloading for the Faulkner, La Arcada, and the Museum of Art, and the existing library lawn. We came back to work at tables together around scaled site plans of the project area. We worked in groups looking at the sharing site observations and the public's aspirations for the site, suggestions. The tables worked in teams, and then at the end of the day or the evening, they presented their take on the project to the rest of the group. These we worked to develop these schemes over the two workshops and to refine them to develop public goals and guidelines for the project. The first, improve visibility and open sight lines throughout the project. Create level, flexible, inviting to all spaces for daily life and special events. Improve the pedestrian paseo with wider ramps, walkways, better visibility, and lighting. Improve lighting throughout, but keep it soft. Improve the entry walk and signage for the library. Replace the fountain with a lower, more appealing design. Remove the planters and plantings in front of the historic library entrance along Anapamu Street. Replace lawn, small trees and hedges with low-growing, low-maintenance, drought-adapted materials. Consider removing eucalyptus and trimming or removing oaks. Add artworks and/or installations relating to the library or literature. For example, a poet's corner. And as you know, Santa Barbara has a very rich literary history. Relocate bicycle parking to a more visible, safe location. A number of participants talked about bicycles, the degree of bicycle thefts from this area, because you can see the area is not visible because of the planters and the plantings around it. Add flexible seating and movable tables and chairs. Add activities and programming to activate the plaza. For example, a refreshment cart, kiosk, visitors, information, etc. There are a number of programs that take place in the Faulkner Library already, which could use a easily, readily accessible exterior space. Add equal access to the south entrance of the library. This was off the scope of the original project, but participants in the workshops were unanimous in adding this access to the south entrance of the library. Improve the lower level plaza loading dock. Many participants noted that this area is ugly and unappealing. This Library Avenue Plaza was also off the scope of the project at the time, but these were their comments. Then, of course, we took a concept design to the HLC, and as the chairman has noted, there were a number of comments that were made during that time. I won't repeat them here since you've already heard them. A lot of them echoed the same sentiments that were in the echoed by the workshops. Subsequently, the City Council landmarked 5 eucalyptus trees on the site, 3 in front of the north entrance to the library in Faulkner, and 2 in front of the south entrance to the library in Faulkner. In 2013, the scope of the project increased to include the entire precinct, public precinct, around the library and Faulkner building. So you can see it added the area along Library Plaza, along Library Avenue and Lower Library Avenue Plaza. So the project scope in terms of programming also increased to create safe, inviting entrances to the library and Faulkner Gallery, to create a flexible public plaza for the library and Faulkner events and other activities, to create equal access throughout the library precinct. There are many design determinants, shapers, and touchstones for this project. They include guidelines established by the city for El Pueblo Viejo, for the urban design guidelines for downtown, sustainability policies and goals. There are a number of public groups that commented on the project. We've met with the Parks and Rec Commission and with Street Trees Advisory Commission. Of course, we're coming to you today. We've also met extensively with city staff, library, of course, fire, police, building and safety, especially ADA compliance, public works, engineering, downtown parking, transportation, parks and rec, and with the neighbors, of course, the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, La Arcada, and other merchants in the neighborhood. So these issues of accessibility are very important to the project. We have the problem on the south of the library, as I've mentioned, alluded to. You can see this signage on the south entry to the library in Faulkner, which directs those disabled that park in the handicap spaces in the library parking garage that they must access the library by going east along Library Avenue, up Anacapa Street, over west along Anapamu Street, and into the north entry of the library. Because all the paseos within the project are not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, nor with present building codes. There are also issues with the open spaces of the project which are not accessible and not compliant to present-day codes. That includes the lower Library Avenue Plaza, the library lawn, the forecourt in front of the Faulkner and library to the north. And you can see the stairs that lead here to the old entrance, the original entrance of the Faulkner Gallery. Right now, this is only fire exiting to the Faulkner. So here you see a grading plan that illustrates equal access throughout the site and compliant gathering spaces. The yellow represents grades that are very flat. They're less than 1 in 50 in slope. The orange represents grades that are less than 1 in 20 in slope, so they're just eased walkways, much like the grade along the sidewalk along Anacapa Street. And the blue represent ramps. Here is a rendering of the concept as if taken from the Granada Garage looking towards the project. You can see the oak trees in the foreground are ghosted in to allow views down into the plaza. You can see how the walkway to the entry, the combined entry, has been opened up as much as possible. The retaining walls have been lowered or removed entirely. The plaza level is raised to about the level instead of being depressed as the lawn is sunken 2 feet below the Anapamu sidewalk. It has been raised to about the level of the Anapamu sidewalk to increase visibility into the plaza. The fountain that was originally in front of the water feature in front of the Faulkner has been recreated here in its tripartite elements as it steps down towards Anapamu Street from the Faulkner. There is a level forecourt provided in front of the Faulkner and library entries so that access to the Faulkner through the original doors can be achieved when there's, for example, a art reception in the Faulkner, so that people could move in and out from this forecourt. There might be a refreshment stand there or somebody giving information there at the forecourt. So Library Plaza is easily accessible both by wheelchair strollers and pedestrians. You can see through the three sections of the fountain. Library Paseo is widened and opened. The high planter walls have been removed, and planting is now at grade. Here's a shot as if hovering in a balloon above La Arcada, looking down at Library Avenue Plaza in the foreground. You can see the Paseo, Library Paseo, running up between the Museum of Art and Library Plaza. Library Plaza above. You can see there's, for illustration, there's a refreshment cart there. You can see how the grading is eased along Library Avenue to make it accessible, fully ADA compliant at a 1:20 slope coming down. And the pedestrian and vehicular traffic is separated as per the policy of the City of Santa Barbara. You can also see the pedestrian access ramps, the ramps on the south side of the library. This is a demolition plan. I see you have it in front of you here. It shows the extent of demolition. Much of the paving has to be demolished. Much is in bad condition anyway, but to make it, to regrade, to make this compliant with present-day codes. The planter walls have been removed, and some of the planting has been removed. All of the lawn has been removed. Oh, most of it, not in front of the historic library along at Pamu. Here is the list of the plant materials to be used. All of it is drought adapted, low maintenance, resource conserving. The plant material is on the El Pueblo Viejo recommended plant list, all except the 2 aquatic plants. Here are, and I will explain now the plant material that is to be removed. 18 Indian hawthorn trees that ring the library lawn. They will be relocated off-site. 4 saucer magnolias that are embedded in the boxwood around the existing fountain. They will be relocated off-site. 4 Hollywood junipers, 2 in front of the historic library doors. You can see them here in the planters on the photo on the left, on the top right, and the bottom right. 2 Hollywood junipers in front of the Faulkner, historic Faulkner, 1 on the upper level, 1 on the lower level. 1 Nichols willow-leaved peppermint. This grows along Library Avenue. You can see this tree leaning over in the photograph on the right. It has dropped several major branches over the course of this project. 1 nickel-leaf peppermint that is in the planter at the base of the Library Avenue Paseo. This is essentially in a large container. Eucalyptus of this type really don't like this condition of being in a container. You can see in the slide on the left how it has broken. The container has developed cracks. These have been repaired and replaced over the course of a couple of times over the course of the project. 5 kumquats that are in this container behind the planter, behind the existing bike parking. They are in decline. This illustrated plan shows the area of new paving and planting, which are colored. The rest will remain in place. The design style really takes as a touchstone the 2 landmark buildings, the library, the Spanish Renaissance revival of the library, and the Egyptian zigzag moderne of the Faulkner Gallery. We also look for the plant material and for pattern to historic Mediterranean gardens. You can see here the olive, the sycamore tree, and the palms, and the zigzag patterns. This is a rendering showing the concept design as if looking from Anapamu Street towards the Faulkner and the library building. You can see how, with a shot, an early photograph of the Faulkner above on axis, you can see how the view of the entry, the combined entry, is opened up, and how the low stepped water feature recreates this view of the Faulkner, and how Library Plaza is much more open to Anapamu Street. As I said, the grade has been raised so that you can look directly into the plaza, so that it's far more transparent towards these historic buildings. We also took that as inspiration as the period of significance of those two the landmark buildings. We proposed to use natural concrete, to use paving patterns with a permeable paving system to recoup as much runoff water as possible on site, in keeping with the City of Santa Barbara's sustainability goals and guidelines. You can see the pattern at the center photograph. That is the brick pattern along State Street in El Pueblo Viejo. Here, recreated there in concrete pavers. As far as the lighting, taking the HLC advised that these that the standards should be special and of El Pueblo Viejo, to modify some of the light standards along State Street, to modify them for this project, to add uplights under the oak trees to uplight these and highlight these magnificent specimens, and to use step lighting wherever possible, in the recreation of the fountain and the step walls along any stairs, to light the path of travel for safety reasons. The signage, we propose it to be very simple, low monument signs of either cast concrete or stone with incised lettering. There will be 3 new signs, one at the entry to the walkway to the northern front doors along Anapamu Street, one at the corner of Anapamu and Anacapa Street, and one at the corner of Anacapa and Library Avenue. Those are at the base of palm planters, relocated palms. Oh, sorry. Is this better? I'm sorry. I have to look. Okay. For handrails, we propose very simple handrails, durable material, cast iron or steel, painted black. You can see here taken from the library itself, and that are ones that are found in El Pueblo Viejo. Plant list you see here, as I said, drought adapted, low maintenance, resource conserving, as I said, all on the Pueblo Viejo plant list except for the aquatic plants. The elevation here along Anapamu Street, the existing is on the top of the slide, the proposed on the bottom of the slide. The colored areas are the new proposal. All the rest shall remain in place. Along the Anapamu Street sidewalk, we propose to increase the width of the sidewalk to be in conformance with the downtown guidelines and the El Pueblo Viejo guidelines. To increase this, you can see it gets down to 3 feet 8 inches here, where it meets this planter and the tree well. We will be taking out more in order to accomplish this, as well as some of the planters, which we are proposing to be removed anyway. Here's the planting and its elevation in more detail. As you see, we relocate a chamaerops, the Mediterranean fan palm, that is presently in front of the library at the very entrance to the northern entrance to the library, to move it to this corner. A tip of the hat to the palm collection of the courthouse across the street. We intend on using Carissa natal plum as a low planting. That is also a nod to the Carissa that's at the corner, the Lockwood DeForest corner at Anapamu and State Street, just down the block in front of the Museum of Art, and to, on the other end, to the Carissa that's at the corner of the courthouse along Anapamu and Anacapa Street. Behind it, we have Dorianthus just as an accent to help call out and have a symmetrical setting for the beautiful doors and entablature above them. We also repeat the camellias that are on to the left of looking at those doors. We repeat them on the right-hand side where the planting is not in existence anymore. In front of under the eucalyptus trees at the front of the library, we propose on using Korea, Australian fuchsia as a durable plant, a low-growing plant under the oak trees, provide ground cover. We're adding agapanthus on 2 sections of the water feature. We have accents of Strelitzia, bird of paradise. Bird of paradise has been adopted. An abstracted form of the bird of paradise is the new library, downtown library logo, so we wanted to use it and accent it in person there. And then a low-growing cotoneaster grows about 8 inches high underneath the oaks. This is a durable, low-maintenance, shade-tolerant, extremely drought-tolerant plant to replace the lawn under the 2 magnificent oaks along Anapamu Street, and to discourage traffic, to provide visibility into the plaza, but discourage foot traffic between the sidewalk and the plaza. And then accents of clivia along the shady wall, along the museum, along the Paseo.
Can I ask you to speed things up?
All right.
Get ready to wrap things up, please.
All right. Here is a view looking down the Paseo. You see the existing and the proposed. The Paseo has been widened to 12 feet wide with a 3-foot planting strip along the museum wall. There is a bollard at either end to prevent vehicular traffic on this pedestrian Paseo. And here a section elevation through the Paseo looking towards the Art Museum, existing above, proposed in the bottom. You can see there's a number of different plant material used along this edge. The Street Tree Advisory Commission and the Parks and Rec have asked that there be some trees added to this planting. You see this is a section through Anapamu Street to the left, Library Plaza and Library Avenue Plaza, and Library Avenue. We'll be adding some trees to the project. A couple of sycamores you see here in the lower plaza. One sycamore in the plaza above, behind us in this elevation. The sycamores will add shade to Library Plaza, Library Avenue Plaza, and shade the Faulkner Building to help with its heat gain over the summer. You see how removing the Indian hawthorn and the kumquats allow a view of this spectacular Senegal date palm. And here the understory planting and Library Plaza, cotoneaster again, the lilies of the Nile along the fountain, birds of paradise at the upper and lower entries to the library in Faulkner. And accent planting is again in Lower Library Plaza. We've selected plant materials that bloom over time so that we provide color throughout the year. The south side of the library through Library Avenue, looking at the south elevation. This is where the new handicap ramp, we proposed to put the handicap ramp in to fit into this arcade. We will relocate the Senegal date palm that's in this planter and move it to the corner of Library Avenue and Anacapa Street. We also propose to remove the hedge of Caliandra that blocks sunlight and air from reaching the lower level of the library, which is soon to be the children's wing of the library, and to replace the slope planting for low maintenance. And here are the plant materials. Again, we've added spider aloe, Australian fuchsia, Korea under the remaining eucalyptus tree, an accent of Nile trumpet tree at the back at the south entry, and birds of paradise to call out the entry again, and then various slope plantings such as lantana. Here's a view again of the project from above La Arcada looking down into Library Avenue Plaza, and the view from the Granada building.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Thank you for wrapping it up. I am going to make an announcement. If there's anybody that owns a blue Ford Mustang that is parked behind the iron gate here, they need to move that Mustang right now. Anybody? Okay, thank you. I'm going to open public comment. I have an important phone call to make, so Vice Chair Winnick is going to take over. First person is Frank Goss, followed by Lynn Tomlinson. Lynn, if you could please come up to the front row and be ready to speak after Frank Goss. Thank you.
Here you go. Take your pick. This is good.
There you go.
Thank you for having the comment, and thank you for the service that you provide our city. My name is Frank Goss. I own 7 East Anapamu, and I lease 11 East Anapamu and about 5 other backs of property there, and I've been there for exactly 20 years. And that nice view that she has left up here, thank you for leaving that. That's my view. I look out and I see exactly that from the angle that this is coincidentally taken from. And I have watched plan after plan after plan from some of them 16, 17, 18 years ago for dealing with this. And the circumstances have changed on that block in that time. And when I first came, there was a gentler, sweeter, kinder, different attitude downtown, and we worried about different things at that time. Today, we don't worry about those things. The number one worry, I don't think you have them drawn in here, are people whose lives are unfortunately difficult, people who are have jail records as long as your arm, and there is every kind of resident in that little plaza, and 3 of the people sitting here today are women. Most of the users there, not counting the night visitors, are women. Most of them are taking their children to that library. And I have watched fights, I've broken up fights, I've seen drug dealing, I've seen the worst kinds of behavior short of murder in that plaza, and it's up to you to do something about that. It's an enormously important thing that you are doing today. My great fear is that I'll be walking up that walk that you see now, passing the library, and thrown to one side or the other will be some little 5-year-old girl who has been raped and killed and left there. And you are the ones responsible for creating an atmosphere that doesn't allow that to happen. I absolutely am thrilled to see that this is tenanted, that there is somebody who will be able to say, I lease this little plot of land where the umbrellas are is my property. And you're certainly welcome to come here if you want to do business and dine in my little pagoda and tables and chairs. And that would make for I'm reminded of the Tuileries. I'm reminded of all the public gardens, Bryant Park in New York. Mm-hmm. This has absolutely wonderful relationship to them. Of the designs that I've seen over the years, I've never seen one that dealt with the situation that I'm sorry to bring up such a rude and awful and heinous thing, but I've never seen one that dealt with it in this way. The shrubs and trees are as low as could be. You could have a 3 or 4-year-old walking along Anapamu and look all the way to the back of the building and see whether or not there was somebody laying in wait for them there.
So I'm just going to ask you to speed up because we really need to.
I'm done.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yes. Next, please come on up. So the next speaker is Lynn. I never say your name right. Hi, Lynn. Welcome. And after her is Fred Sweeney. If you could come up to be ready next. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms.
My name is Lynn Tamisian, and I represent ownership and management of La Arcata. And I would echo everything Mr. Goss said. We have seen over the years just the deterioration of that whole area. We have 50 businesses upstairs above the courtyard, and many of the women will ask our guard, who we have had to install in the last year and a half, to walk them to the street just because of the security issue in that walkway. And we have a really good relationship with the library. Irene and I have talked a lot, and I'm...
Just have to move it closer. No, it's on.
Is it on?
Yeah.
And I'm just really pleased to be able to say we are so with this project. I think it will be a beautiful addition. Just for La Arcata, it will provide a wonderful walkway from Anapamu to the entrance of our courtyard. But aside from that, I just think that it would be a beautiful addition to the city. So I'm happy to say that we are all for it.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Tinleysian. Fred Sweeney, followed by Carissa Pleister. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you. Fred Sweeney, resident of 10 East Quinto Street. This is nice. I certainly appreciate the effort that's been made to meet with all the folks and the public workshops, et cetera. So it's a nice design, but it's disappointing. We're missing a great opportunity here to create a great civic place, and we're not getting it. I think that we're missed opportunity. Frank Goss talked about the issue of looking into that plaza. We're creating nothing except for the two little canvas awnings that allows that space to be active. We haven't dealt with the entrance to the library. We've got 3 doors to look at. Which one do you go in? Right now, it's all pointing to a door that might be open in the evening. We are not addressing dealing with getting down to La Arcata Court. We're missing a wonderful opportunity here. We could have come up with a really creative, great design that really says Santa Barbara. This design does not say Santa Barbara to me. It doesn't, I think, intone the character which people like Luda Riggs offered to our community. I think we're not there. I think this is a nice design, but I think it's non-deserving of us as a community.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Krista Pleiser, followed by Kat Schwartz.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Krista Pleiser. I am the president of the Friends of the Santa Barbara Public Library. I'm here to let you know that the Friends are supportive of this idea of this project. The Friends, we are here in order to help enhance programs, enhance children's education, enhance the adults' lives in this community, enhance the community as a whole. And with that, we like to make sure that there's things such as storytelling and public shows and juggling and Bubble Mania. Who doesn't like Bubble Mania, right? And silly science. And these are all things that we support. And what would be greater than being able to have our community go outdoors for a change and enjoy the sunlight, enjoy the open air, have a safe, healthy place in order to have that. And this is that place. This is a project that needs to be done, and the Friends are supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. I'm sorry, that was Ms. Pleiser, Ms. Schwartz, followed by Kellum DeForest.
Hi, I'm Kate Schwab.
Schwab, excuse me.
Me of the bad handwriting. I'm Santa Barbara Downtown Organization Marketing and Communications Director. Thank you. From our point of view, we are looking forward to that space. We do First Thursday every month. So in October of 2013, the library itself participated in First Thursday in the most clever, unique, hands-on, family-friendly, brilliant way. It was delightfully book-related. They brought in to kick off the big read, and the novel was the classic Vietnam novel by Tim O'Brien, The Things They Carried. They brought in a Huey helicopter and parked it there in Anapamu. And so it was exactly the kind of event we're looking for that's different and out-of-the-box thinking. So I'm looking forward, to reiterate the previous speaker, I'm looking forward to utilizing that space as another venue for all kinds of cool things for First Thursday. We have other spaces downtown, but that would be an amazing space for musicians, anything, even Bubble Mania, even a helicopter. So we, Downtown Organization supports that, the way this project looks. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schwab, followed by Kellum DeForest, and then Mary Louise Days. Mary Louise, if you could please come up to the front row.
Excuse me. I commend this project, and I think it looks very Santa Barbara. And I'm a native Santa Barbaran, so bringing back the elements of what I remember from childhood of the pools, going up to the Faulkner and going in the Faulkner Gallery by the proper door, certainly restores that element, and obviously providing an outdoor plaza is great, because that would give the library an opportunity to expand some of its programs outside. I would like to know what is the width of the Paseo now that has been argued about, and maybe we'll hear from the Museum of Art. Are they satisfied with this project? I think they can work with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Ms. Days, followed by Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns, if you could please come up to the front row.
Thank you. Mary Louise Days, a retired planner. I think there's exciting things in this project, such as exposing the wonderful historic main door again that we used to use, and saving the oak trees, and perhaps putting in the water feature in front of the Faulkner that we remember. I have strong doubts about the walkway adjacent to the Museum of Art building. I think 10 feet has been proposed. I believe I heard today it's proposed for 12 feet. That to me sounds like something that's useful for a vehicle. I think it would be very, very hazardous and inappropriate if a curb cut were installed to allow for that. For a 12-foot walkway, Paseo to me seems to be excessively wide. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Days. Mr. Burns? That's the last public speaker slip I have. Mr. Burns.
Thank you. My name's Scott Burns. I live at 2319 Garden Street. I was on the Park and Rec Commission a few years ago, and that's when I first got involved with this project. There are some issues that I think this is going to help solve. Just before I got here, I walked over to the library, and there were 4 or 5 people sleeping, a couple of people just hanging out there, and they're really not the sort of persons that I think we really want to promote in our city. One of the things when I was here, when I was on the Park and Rec Commission, I remember seeing a lady with a child in a stroller walking down State Street and suddenly stop, wondering what she was doing, and I realized there was a group of just vagrants that she didn't want to walk her child by. And we really want to have this as a place where a lady with a stroller would be very comfortable in. I think it's a good project. I hope you guys are able to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. And I have one letter that was sent from Mr. Burke. He has a lot of questions. He is for the new plaza. He says the current one is ugly. Wants a discussion of social justice issues to be declared policy of this council. Too much talk never destroyed a democracy. That's basically where he's coming from. So he is in favor of the plan. I am going to close public comment, bring it to the commission then for questions. Mr. Sharp, do you have any questions?
My question,
welcome back.
What was brought up earlier, how wide is the proposed arcade from Hanapomu down to
12 feet wide with a 3-foot planter along the wall of the museum.
But it falls to
Yes, for the Paseo along the side of the art museum. Yes, 12 feet wide with 3 feet planter. The present Paseo is 7 feet wide.
Can I stop you 1 second?
Yes.
I'm going to make some noise, and I don't want you to be interrupted by the noise.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, continue, Ms. Campbell.
So you will see on your plan that the new Paseo will be 12 feet wide with a 3-foot section, a 3-foot planter. The easternmost wall or edge of the Paseo. We have kept that all the way down because of the adjacent oak trees and the future health of the oak trees. We don't want to grade in the area of the oak trees. So you see the segment next to the oaks between the link to the plaza and the Anna Camus Street sidewalk has been kept at the same grade. Then we start to go down from that point.
Thank you.
Since it's 12 feet wide, it will require a bollard at the center to prevent vehicles from driving on it. So at the top and at the bottom.
Commissioner Mahan, any questions?
Yes. Are these bollards removable in case there's reason for fire or somebody to get down in there?
There really is no reason for fire to access there. They would come in from Anna Camus Street, or they have access to Lower Library Avenue.
So those are permanent bollards?
They would be permanent bollards, yes.
We're in questions, right?
Yes.
This is the brick, I presume, here?
It is concrete pavers, probably in keeping with the natural concrete of the period of importance, of significance for the two landmark buildings.
And what are these materials here?
Mr. Mahan, I'm going to have to ask you to point to the plan.
Excuse me. Okay,
camera,
so these are concrete bricks. And then what are the materials? These are.
Oh, I will show you.
Okay.
If I may. So in areas where where we are graded to 1 in 50 or less, we're able to use a permeable paver system in order to retain water on site. So those are the forecourt in front of the combined entry to the library and the Faulkner here, and to the entry to the Faulkner here, in Library Plaza itself, in front of the historic library here, and at the southern entrance of the library and Faulkner. In the Lower Library Avenue Plaza, this is a working plaza with large trucks coming and going, and we feel that poured concrete would be a more appropriate surface for that, a durable surface for that. So those are the areas, and these are all, other areas are sloped.
Can I have the sword back?
Yes, please.
But what is the material? What is the material?
Concrete pavers.
These are concrete too, and these are all. This is all concrete.
Concrete, as the period of significance of the two buildings, as typical.
Okay,
natural colored concrete.
To clarify Mr. Mahan's question, these are pavers. This is monolithic poured-in-place concrete.
Poured-in-place concrete with various finish.
Okay.
Probably sandblast.
Okay.
Same with this down here.
Correct.
Thank you.
Does that clarify?
It does.
Okay. Commissioner Winnick?
Yeah, a couple questions. First question. I don't think I have to point. You may have it back over. I know, it's looking dangerous here, but we'll bring this in. The first question I have is, we had lots of public comment, and obviously we're happy to move things along and not have more, but it did seem unusual to me that we didn't hear from the museum. So I'm curious, in your preamble you mentioned that you've been working on the museum. Can you relay, how has this addressed the concerns that they may have had?
Oh, yes, certainly.
Or, actually, you didn't say it, but she did, but you're certainly
Yes. We've met many times with the museum over the last 9 months, I'd say. Mm-hmm. If I could have the pointer, I will point out. There was concern about the Paseo. We had begun the project by suggesting a 10-foot wide Paseo, as is suggested in the urban design guidelines and the Paseo guidelines for downtown Santa Barbara. The museum asked for a wider Paseo. The 10-foot would not require the bollard at the center. That's what we preferred. But so we widened the Paseo from 10 to 12 feet to accommodate the museum. We removed the planter along the top stretch, or the far northerly stretch of the Paseo. This would be altogether 15 feet wide to this, maintaining this wall at the base of the oak trees, because in future they had, at the time, were suggesting they would back trucks into this area for unloading and offloading. So that's another way we accommodated them. We also accommodated their proposed staff entrance, which will be somewhere along this edge. It has moved over the time of our discussions and involvement with them. So we provide a landing for them along this walkway as required by the ADA. So we have a landing to accommodate them. And we had a set of Howlia palm trees, Kentia palms, much like the palms that are at the entry, the lower entry of the museum today, and of course grow in that same condition on the courthouse on this against this west-facing wall. We had them lined along this edge, and we removed the palms. So those are the accommodations that we've made for the museum.
Great, thank you. And I'll limit myself to 2 questions. My other question is, it's kind of in response to the questions about activating the courtyard.
Could you speak up?
Sorry, mic is on, but I'll speak louder, I guess.
Use your outside voice.
Okay, my outside voice. Must have played with some children along the way. Okay, so basically just responding to that issue of activating the outdoor courtyard space. What I'm wondering is, I understand the ADA access and why all the ramping, but I was wondering if it was ever explored, if there was another way to actually be able to travel through the courtyard space down to the lower courtyard areas, if that had been looked at.
Chair Sudi and members of the commission, we did actually ask Campbell and Campbell to develop that as an option, but the more we thought about it, because the library receives deliveries here 4 to 5 times a day. I'm sorry.
Right.
We thought that having steps with lots of traffic here would not be the best idea.
The other reason is that in terms of an urban design standpoint, it's putting yet another parallel path of travel next to this Paseo that is already there. And we really do want to keep the activation on the Paseo. I think it would probably be better to look at this from the illustrative plan.
Do we have that?
If you have one, that'd be great.
We couldn't find one, but we stopped.
Here.
Well, I guess
Which sheet is it?
What is it?
Well, we'll go back. We saw a demo plan on the beginning of this one.
Maybe it's stuck together here.
Okay. Okay, does everybody want to get on L-1.1? Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
You may also see that these connectors to the plaza, the stair connects on axis with this existing niche in the library to point out this historic piece of the library as you walk through. And then here is the equal access passage. We're also concerned in terms of urban design to bleed away all the corners of the plaza with traffic, so it's just traffic going through, so that this might become a place where a poetry reading would take place, or the refreshment cart would be set up, etc.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. You said that along this edge you had proposed the Kentia palms, and
Yes.
now you're, in working with Santa Barbara Museum of Art, you've removed those. But you are still proposing some planting there,
Well,
much
yes.
narrower than it is now.
Exactly. Well, we had wanted a wider width. As you know, it's easier to maintain a wider width, to find plant material that stays within that 3-foot width over a long duration. We're looking at a long duration and low maintenance. It's more difficult. And because we wanted trees to soften that edge more in the Santa Barbara way. And because we wanted to connect this Paseo with this, the Kentias right here, and the historic Kentias, and in talking to Mary Louise Day, she talked about how the Kentia is very important in the history of Santa Barbara. So we thought they would be perfect. As I said, when we talked to Parks and Rec Commission and the Street Tree Advisory, they asked that we replace some trees along this edge. So we had talked about placing at least one tree up here, probably a Kentia, and then another tree down here, maybe a shade tree. We would like to have shade trees to the south of Library Avenue Plaza. As you know, that plaza can get quite hot now, today, as you walk through it. Even on this day in February, it can get quite hot out here, so we wanted to shade plaza. I should say that the other thing we accommodated the museum with, we had extended a planting strip in here and put a tree for that very purpose, and we've removed it to maintain complete access to their loading area.
Have you explored the use of half-tree well?
A half-tree?
Half-tree grate, excuse me.
Oh, a half-tree grate, yes, well, but they wanted nothing in front of their loading area, so that's why we had removed it.
And you may have addressed this already, and I didn't hear it, but where are bikes parking?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I did not. So we have bike parking along Anapamu Street here between the pear trees. We didn't want them to be stacked right at the entry of the library. A lot of people had commented they don't like the bike pile-up here. So we put them out front along Anapamu Street, so if you arrive by Anapamu Street, just a minute, we also include them here in this area. So a stair would obliterate this bike parking here at the base, right down here, for especially for staff and for events that occur in Library Avenue Plaza. And we also have added more bike parking. There is some here along the walkway, and we're adding more here to the south entrance of the library to accommodate them with the parking structure.
Great, thank
along
you.
La Arcata.
Commissioner Murray, questions?
So can you just remind us again, just walk us through, if you're parking here and you're ADA and you are in a wheelchair and how you go. I just would like to see that one more time.
This is one thing we're very excited about in the workshop and was very happy about. So if you park, if you're taking a wheelchair friend or yourself in the handicap parking in the library parking structure, you come out through a little door here where the elevator is and come out along the existing paseo. We've narrowed it at this point here so that it no longer needs a bollard. A bollard was introduced over the last year or so into this area because there were trucks parking. It is 12 feet wide, so they've added the bollard to stop trucks from parking there. Walk across Library Avenue, and this is a designated pedestrian walkway. There will be a curb separation between the vehicular traffic and the pedestrian walkway here. You walk up to a forecourt here where the two eucalyptus. The eucalyptus are now coming right out of some brick that are piled right up next to their trunks, and the paving is very uneven at this point, quite dangerous. So we're leveling this out, providing planting areas for each of the eucalyptus to help them in future. And here is the ramp that comes up and comes into the south entry of the library so that we will have addressed this issue here. And as I said, there's a Senegal date palm here in this planter. We are relocating it down to the corner of Anacapa and Library Avenue. We're also pulling back this planting area a little bit just to provide access around this corner. We had tried to add a little more sidewalk here. This is only about 6 feet wide.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lavoie.
No question.
Commissioner Ritz, any questions?
Just one simple one. What you are now proposing will provide access for the art museum to have large trucks to deliver to them?
Can I answer that?
Yes or no?
There is space for the museum to have deliveries. Whether or not they would be permitted hasn't been decided.
Okay.
But you will be able to accommodate that. Your plans currently accommodate that.
The plan would currently accommodate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schallenberger.
I think you went over it really briefly in the slide presentation, but can you reiterate how Anacapa Street facade and streetscape is being treated?
Oh, yes. It remains the same. It remains the same, except that at this corner, presently, the corner, of course, we've added this 4 feet of sidewalk along Anapamu Street, so the corner is cut back. There's a high planter that was added during the 80s. We're removing that planter, and we're just extending the historic stone wall. There's a sandstone wall right here, that little retaining wall along the sidewalk. We're just going to bring it around the corner and place the palm that's now right in front of the library entry on the north. We're replacing it to this corner to give a shout out to the palm collection at the courthouse across the street. And then we are removing this myrtle hedge here, right next to the bus stop, which is in this raised planter, so that it obscures views. If you're standing here at the bus stop and you're looking up Anacapa Street to see the bus coming, you can't see it. It's blocked by this myrtle shrub. So we would like to take out the myrtle and just increase. There's on the other side of the myrtle already are agapanthus. We just want to extend them here.
One more question.
Was there was talk of removing some hedges
Yes,
as well?
there's a Calliandra hedge that runs along this slope, that slopes down to the basement level of the library. That basement level is going to be remodeled as a children's wing. So we're removing this tall Calliandra, as you might know, gets up to be 14, 16 feet high and is constantly being trimmed by the city. We're recommending removal of that hedge and replanting this slope. There's almost no planting besides the Calliandra on this slope except some existing palm trees. All existing trees will remain, and we will simply add to the slope planting to retain the slope and add some color and looking out from the children's wing out onto the slope.
What about directly against the building up on the northern portion of that facade?
Up here,
Yes.
that all remains exactly as it is today. Those are camellias. There's a little boxwood hedge. The boxwood hedge runs around on the Anacapa Street edge, and that will all remain just as it is. The only place we're adding planting is right here. We're taking away the planters in front of the historic door. We're adding some planting on either side of the historic doors and adding some camellias in this area to balance the camellias that exist on the other side to give a symmetrical setting. The HLC had talked about providing formal settings for these buildings, and it's in keeping with the Spanish Renaissance revival.
Commissioner Rios, question.
Yeah, one last question. Is there any public easements on this property?
Like, for instance, is this a public easement here? Library alley?
It's called Library Avenue, I think.
Library Avenue, excuse me.
Are there public easements?
It's city property.
It is city property,
Yes.
and it is established as park property or public property or what?
It is the Public Works property for the parking
It's
structure.
not under the parks jurisdiction?
No.
Okay, because there are very strict restrictions under our charter. So there is a public easement along there. Fine, thank you.
It brings up a question, just out of curiosity, what is the library under? Not Public Works.
It's a department on its own.
Okay, makes sense. Last question I have. How do concrete pavers fit into the El Pueblo Viejo guidelines?
Well, we were looking at concrete pavers because we wanted to bring this back, as I said, to the period of significance for natural concrete, and this would enable us to retain the water on site and have them as permeable. Permeable concrete is still in development, as you may know, and it has a lot of maintenance associated with it. We didn't want to load this project with a lot of maintenance, putting public funds towards that. So the concrete pavers is one way of avoiding that. What essentially it does is it's just a smaller, more pedestrian-sized module. And instead of using brick, which there's no brick in any of these buildings, so we didn't want to bring a new material in, but just something that would be very low-key.
Concrete pavers are a recent addition to the paving palette.
I realize
when
that.
you say, concrete, bringing it back to the period of significance,
In
you're
terms of
really
its-
talking about poured-in-place concrete, I think.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Mr. Campbell?
However, we would add that our previous work with both projects by Winslow, the associate architect on the LA Central Library, and with the work of Myron Hunt, both with the Montecito Country Club and with the Dabney Library at Caltech of the late 20s, early 30s. As Regula has explained, the module and the grain of the concrete is what we're looking for. The concrete paver that we intend to propose, which is listed, I think, in the drawings, is a paver that is a very formal and tight module, and doesn't appear as separate elements.
So it's gapless paver.
Precisely. However, it still provides both air and water transmission, and we believe is an appropriate use of that paving.
Okay, I'm sorry. Could you tell me what paver that is, please?
Yes, we're showing a step stone. You go back to the.
So it's the porcelain?
CalArc
porcelain or equivalent porcelain. Okay.
It's two light shades of gray, natural concrete gray.
It's a great paver. It's very fragile.
Yes.
That's a comment.
No, it's an important.
It depends on the dimension.
It also depends on the manufacturer and the country of origin.
And the construction.
Yes, indeed.
The detail.
Indeed, and we are very mindful also of the underlayment and of the total construction of the cross section in all these cases, both from the point of view of durability and traffic and vehicular traffic resistance, as well as for the opportunity provided for a system of underdrains. We're taking a very assertive approach to groundwater retention and recharge.
Great.
So that's the purpose, essentially, of using that technology.
It is a very beautiful paver. Comments. Start with Commissioner Sharp. We haven't heard from you in a while. Comments.
Well, I think it's a very good plan overall. I think we're lucky to have the Campbells being the architects for this. They're certainly well qualified and have done a lot of public plazas, that's for sure. I think the openness is very good. I think the restoration of the fountains, as we discussed in 2011, is very good. I don't mind the plant removal that is proposed. I think it promotes the openness, which is very important. And I am still concerned about the 12-foot access, thinking it should be 8 or 10 feet, and I would love to see some landscaping against the east elevation of the museum, art museum building.
Okay. Commissioner Mahand?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did review the prior minutes and I'm allowed here, review the prior minutes and the videos of this. I agree with Mr. Sharp's comments. I think that slightly narrower paseo would be okay, and a wider planter against the museum would be an improvement. I have a problem with, I don't have a problem with concrete in the, of course, in where the truck vehicles deliver, and I even think concrete in the paseo there, which is more like a public sidewalk, and of course along here probably the concrete's okay, but I have a problem with so much concrete. I don't think that it meets our guidelines, which say that brick, tile, and stone are preferred surfaces. I think that this is a real improvement. So, kudos to the Campbells. But I think the surfaces, the horizontal surfaces, also need to be an improvement. And the courthouse certainly is an example. If we're going to be compatible with things, we would be compatible with the courthouse, which has beautiful stone surfaces. Brick. I know brick could be used. I don't know why this sidewalk isn't done in brick. Some of the other sidewalks, like on Carrillo Street, were done in brick, and I don't know why this one wasn't extended from the plaza. But generally speaking, I like the design. I like the openness. I don't think I can support the gray concrete. Thank you.
Commissioner Winnick.
Okay. Well, in general, there's lots to like in this plan. I very much like the omission of all the high walls and the high plantings, and I think that you've shown a lot of great editing, which sometimes is what, design work requires. Finding the things that are good and keeping them, and taking out the things that really aren't contributing, and I think you've done a really good job of that. I actually meant to ask a question before, so I'll ask it now. On this, because I don't know the historic fountain, was it originally a three-piece fountain, or was it two pieces? I'm just kind of...
It was originally a three-piece
It was,
fountain,
okay.
and as shown on the plan, it gets wider as it moves down its course, just like a river or a stream gets wider as it moves down its
so
course.
anyway, it was
Beautifully done.
it's the same design as was before, so that's great. So one thing that just struck me, though, looking at the design of the fountain in the plan, was it seemed a little constrained having the planter come right next to it on this side. Like, it seemed to make sense to me that it breathed on this side, and I do question the planter touching there, and maybe that's the historic precedent, but there's something about that, it seemed a little funny to me.
It's because of the tree roots, probably.
Oh, it's good. Okay, so there's the answer there. Oops, I'm sorry. Phone should be on off, but it's not.
Who is it?
Now. Let's not put that on the air. And the other thing that I think for me, what my hope would be, and I know it's not necessarily there, is this space always seemed to me like a very unutilized space. I mean, I know that there's traffic going in for deliveries for the library, and there's also what's going on at the museum. But whenever I've walked through that space, that always feels like no man's land. And I don't feel like it's changing when I look at this. I see that there's bicycle parking there, but it seems to me like that fundamental problem is still there, which is why I was asking about having circulation through there. So I guess for me, I would like to see more study in terms of how to make this work better between the two to really encourage activating that courtyard space, because I think having a courtyard space is really quite beautiful. And then I have one more, just to say that I tend to agree with Commissioner Mahan. I'm good with concrete around the predominant paving material, but I think it would be nice that this courtyard be something special, something more than just concrete pavers. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Murray.
I echo a lot of the comments that have been said, so I won't repeat them, but
thank you.
I really feel strongly that 10 feet width of the paseo should remain. And I think the Kensher Palm that you had originally intended for there is really very desirable. I think it will really, to me, will tie all the different components that you are trying to deal with, because you are speaking to the courthouse, speaking to the museum, and I think it will really soften that side of the museum, which is always, from the picture, it's just this stark, wall. So I would really support that very much. I actually, this area, although I don't have any good suggestion on how it should be. I think I heard you really trying to find a way that it, paving or a way that it speaks to the zigzag part of the library. And I guess I'm really I like that. Because then it's not just any pavers, it's not just any hardscape, it has a meaning and a relationship, and I like that. So I'm keeping all the comments from there. I think there's a way of tying the Myron Hunt style in this new fountain element and that paving. The more you think about it and the more you refine it, that would be, I think that could really work. I really like what's been happening here. This is just really wonderful that you're opening the whole entrance and making this corner softer and getting rid of all this sort of jungle over there is, I think, is really good. So I'm really like this project. Thanks.
Commissioner Lavoie?
Some of the comments are the same.
And don't repeat them, please.
Yeah, I will. The plan is greatly improved from what we saw before. I think it is more traditional and speaking more to the period of the buildings. Thank you. Thank you for very much cleaning up the front of the existing main library. That's a great improvement again. Even improved even more over your previous scheme. The concept of using the zigzag pattern and more traditional paving patterns, I think, is to be encouraged. And this is not speaking to the paper in front of us, but those who think that a plaza design or a piece of architecture is going to solve social problems, you're going to be disappointed. We have been in the past, and you will be in the future. This is not how to solve that problem, and you should not put that burden on this design. However, this design does solve some of the visibility problems very well, and that is a good improvement and to be commended. What bothers me most about it, though, also, thank you for the step fountain focused on the Faulkner Gallery. Thank you for including that in the design. That is the strength of this design in speaking to this building and this place. I wish there was a lot less paving. A lot less paving. And maybe the plaza itself, the grass is not a good paving material, but if it was like the flagstone that's at the courthouse, it would seem so much a field of concrete. And if that field of concrete had plane trees in it, it would be a very pleasant place to be in the summer. Which speaks to, we have taken basically a green space and paved it. And I think that's unfortunate. So the amount of more green that you can put into this, the better. I think landscaping against the museum is absolutely critical. And more than 2 Kentia palm trees, if not 8 of them, would be much nicer. Or something vertical. They used to be espalier. I think they were ornamental.
Magnolias.
Were they? Okay. Those were lovely. And that would be nice to carry that around the side of the building, too. And agree with the reduction in the paseo width. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Rios.
I don't believe you went into how the bike parking would be handled on Anapumu Street, and that is something that I would be interested in. I think the reducing the roadway from 12 to less is important, and I agree that landscaping against the museum wall is absolutely mandatory and necessary. The existing fountain, I hope that you find a new home for it. It's a nice fountain. I would hate to see it demolished, but I understand what you're doing, but still I think there's a home for it somewhere else.
Do you have room at your house?
No.
I like the openness. I would like to see less concrete. And the other thing, I agree with Commissioner Lavoie, this doesn't solve social problems. You're going to have to face the fact that there are going to be problems in that plaza, and there is going to have to be surveillance and openness. And if the police can surveil the area easily, it makes it safer, but you're going to have to face the fact that there will have to be continued work. And let's see, the last thing. Well, I would like to see you continue with the same attitude that you have with these plans, and just refine it further. And I think a comment to staff: it would help if we have a detailed project like this that was heard in November. Many of us do not keep large amounts of paper and minutes at home. If we could have a copy of our statements in advance so that we could reading them out, it's difficult to jot down everything and make sure that we respond to things. So if we could have the statements sent with us in our agenda, it would be very helpful. And I think it's really a nice project, and I commend you for it. And again, the thing I'm really strongly about is the 12-foot and the landscaping, I think, and less concrete. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reyes. Commissioner Schallenberger.
Yeah, I think it's a very good sort of blank canvas or starting point. I think programmatically you've responded to a huge amount of information in a very, I think, coherent way, and which is a long way of saying I think it's a very good design generally. I thought the slide presentation was excellent. That conveyed, I think, your project completely and appropriately and entirely, and presented the concept in a way that was broken up really nicely. I think you did a very good job there. As far as just some comments, I think the plans going forward, I think, need some help and some more information. When we asked about where are the bike parking and where's the handicap accessible path, typically those are things that are called out on a drawing and arrows and that type of thing to indicate those types of things. So going forward, maybe just provide more information on the actual drawings. As far as the paseos, and one thing that stood out was in the bird's eye view, I was sort of looking at the proportion and ratio of hard surfaces versus landscape surfaces, and at first it stood out that maybe it was a little more concrete than typically we see, but then I think you could have maybe helped yourself in the presentation to actually put in more people in the rendering, just because each person has its path of travel that's essentially about a 3-foot wide swath, and when you have a number of people at events, it explains why you would need this much paving surfaces, and so I think, thinking it through, it's an entirely appropriate amount of paving. But the patterns themselves, I'm not exactly sure. It looks like I thought I heard that you were letting the slopes determine certain patterns, but just a 2D view of this, it doesn't seem like there's I'm not seeing the rationale for the paving patterns, the scoring patterns, and there's certain relationships to the building and the fountains and that type of thing that I can understand, but changes in square sizes, for example, I'm not exactly sure why some of these things are happening, and I think that could use some more study. I thought Mr. Sweeney's comments about announcements were entirely appropriate. I think that there's some work to be done in that arena. And then the reason I brought up the question of the Anacapa Street facade and how that's being treated is, can you put these on the screen, please? Oops. So, more importantly, the bottom image. But do you see how the landscaping is obscuring that arcade effect of windows? I think I mentioned this back in 2011, but I think that landscape needs to be removed, and that arcade bank of windows needs to be expressed. Those things have an elongated proportion entirely on purpose by the architect. And as far as how we're treating this historic resource, as long as we're dealing with landscaping in total, I think that needs to be studied further. And if you go back up to the image above, Phil, I think you mentioned that you are doing that with these arcades, and you can see the inside corner. That's an entirely appropriate backdrop for some verticality. That it's a blank wall. It's a perfect place for that type of thing. But in front of the windows, in my opinion, is not appropriate and is obscuring a very nice piece of architecture. So I'd like to see that studied. But otherwise, I don't want any of those comments to take away from. I think in a comprehensive view, it's a very good design, and like I said, it feels sort of like a blank canvas. We'll deal with details and patterns and finishes and that type of thing as we go forward. Thank you.
Any other comments before I make mine? I just have a couple. The commission expects a high-end paver if it's going to be proposed for this project. Also, on the light fixtures, try to refrain from using the luminaires from the State Street corridor, just because those are typically used on State Street and they're unique. We like to keep them unique to State Street. So study perhaps a different luminaire than the State Street fixture. I'm going to summarize the comments, do my best. There are a lot of them, so we'll start with the plan is acceptable and workable and traditional. Let's see, the plan is acceptable, workable, and traditional. The slide presentation was well done. The restoration or nod towards the historic fountain is appreciated. Landscape against the east elevation of the Santa Barbara Museum of Art is essential. A narrower paseo, suggested 10 feet, is preferable behind the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. Reintroduce the Kentia palms. That's all one comment.
It's not preferable. It's,
Okay.
It's determined.
I would
The
say-
dimension of the paseo behind the Santa Barbara Museum of Art shall be 10 feet with increased planting.
Significant planting.
With increased significant planting, including Kentia palms. How's that? Okay. The amount of concrete is problematic. The guidelines suggest using tile, stone, brick, etc. The elimination and editing of the landscape is appreciated and effective. The lower library plaza seems to still be disconnected from the upper plaza. Continue to utilize and propose the zigzag pattern as shown, but perhaps in a different material. The treatment of the historic library entrance is appreciated, as is the softening of the corner at Anacapa and Anapamu. Social problems will not be solved by plaza design. Security will always be a concern. Consider significantly reducing the paving, particularly in the plaza. Stone similar to the courthouse was suggested, as was trees in that area. Provide more information on the drawing, such as paths of travel, bike parking, light fixture locations, etc. Flesh out the detail of the bike parking. Find a good home for the existing fountain. Consider the removal or editing of the tall camellia shrubs on the Anacapa elevations to highlight the existing architecture. The lumieres of the light fixtures should not be the State Street style. They should be different than the State Street style. That's all I had. Did I miss anybody's or anything?
I think you got it. You did well.
It's fine. Everyone? Okay. So I'm looking for the motion then.
Motion for indefinite continuance. So move.
3 weeks? What?
No, she said indefinite. So
I know. Excuse me.
Okay, so indefinite is indefinite. Do you second that? Okay. A motion for indefinite continuance and a second by Mayhan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? You understand the motion?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, we only need one set. I don't know their first names.
Let's take that one.
Which one?
Stay back down there.
Yeah. If they're leaving before we can give them back. It's a good time to get a coffee.
I am going to suggest a 5-minute break. Does everybody concur? Then we will adjourn for 5 minutes. We'll reconvene at 3:45. And we will be starting with 1003 Santa Barbara Street A.
If I didn't have you, wouldn't know where to go, wouldn't know what to do. Hey, I never told you, but sometimes I get a little blue. I wouldn't have nothing if I didn't have you. I wouldn't have nothing without you. I wouldn't have nothing if I didn't have you. I wouldn't know where to go, I wouldn't know what to do. I don't have to say it, 'cause we both know it's true. I wouldn't have nothing if I didn't have you. I wouldn't have nothing without you.
Commission and proceed with the next item on the agenda, which is item number 8. By the way, item number 7, 433 East Cabrillo Boulevard, for those people that are interested, has been continued. So this is 1003 Santa Barbara Street A. This is the third concept review. Comments only. Project requires environmental assessment, staff hearing officer review, and NPO findings. Project was last reviewed, on January 29th, 2014. I'll read those comments and then allow you to give a brief presentation. Number 1, the overall presentation was very helpful. 2, the building is still too contemporary and is lacking a sense of identity. It's whimsical, contemporary, and traditional all at the same time. There needs to be more cohesion. Details need to be refined and enhanced, specifically the window details. Facades should be more consistent with each other. Resolve the rail and wall connections. Corners of the roof deck parapet need refinement. The linear windows on the lot line walls are understood, but need more enhancement and detailing. Glass block windows need to be reconciled with El Pueblo Viejo guidelines. Perhaps it could be resolved with clever use of the material. Windows and breakups need to be more consistent. Windows and doors need to be more compatible with El Pueblo Viejo guidelines. The motion was made by Schallenberger. It was seconded by Sharp. It was a 6-0-0 vote. The motion carried. Introduce yourselves, please, to the record and give us a brief presentation.
Okay, I'm Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning.
And I'm Robert Dibley, who's the owner of this.
Welcome both.
Thank you.
So we had it pretty well dialed in as to mass, bulk, and scale and the macro elements of the building as of the last hearing. And our task coming to this hearing was to get some consistency or more consistency on all 4 of the elevations and address a couple of details that were sort of awkward in the last iteration. And so that was really our focus over the last couple of weeks while we refined it. So this front page of our plans hasn't really changed a whole lot. The floor plans haven't changed. The most significant changes are all going to be on these elevation sheets. So I'm going to do my best to walk you through all of these. I'm not an architect, so bear with me. I just learned after all of these years the difference between mullions and muntins. So
probably the wrong place.
Well, congratulations.
All right. So see, you can always learn something new. So starting off, David, the architect, he wanted to make sure that there's a consistent formula sort of being applied to all of the windows. And so what he's doing is, if there's a small window like this, it doesn't have muntins. The medium windows have muntins, and then the larger windows begin to have mullions. And then on these sort of special windows up here on this loggia, they've got this extra wooden detail up on the top. And so he's showing what that would look like here. And then over here on the doors, we've replaced that bottom panel with a wooden detail as well. Ooh, I don't know. That would be a... well, I'm talking about this part in here. This was originally a iron staircase or iron stair rail, which came down and died into this really strange sort of acute angle down there. Okay. We were looking at this and decided we liked this sawtooth detail and just continued that detail up. And then there was a lot of attention that was paid to this over here, which was the glass block, and it wasn't really clearly presented last time. So we've provided a lot of additional detail on how that's supposed to work. To begin with, this is an example from Pueblo Viejo over on Chapala Street. I don't know that those are windows back there, but it's very similar to how this is intended to look. Basically, we don't have glass block that's coming out flush with the edge of the wall and that has stucco dying into it at a joint. These are they're slits basically through or they would appear as slits through the exterior, and then glass is inset back behind them, and they would end up having an appearance more like this. And David prepared this detail sheet. So this this is showing sort of the bottom part of these windows here blown way up. And then this is a square version of the detail. This is actually this building that we're in, I think by the restrooms. And then this is over at 8 Figueroa Street, so right out of our neighborhood, right around the block, where they use diamonds, but there's glass back behind these diamonds. And so that's how this would be executed. It would have this rated glass block, but what you would be seeing on the outside of the building would just be the cut through the stucco, and the glass is inset back behind it. And then here's a detail of how it would be constructed.
Can I get City TV to zoom in, please? Okay.
All right, another detail that we were asked to look at were these cutouts on the corners of the roof deck. Before they had been, they were almost circular, as if this was the radius and there was a perfect circle. And we've changed them to be more elliptical, so they're more of a quarter ellipse just on these two corners, this back one and the front one here. And that's basically it, just getting the windows all consistent and these changes to those other details. Did you want to add?
I did want to add, because these slits were originally last month.
We
here.
eliminated those.
So we eliminated those and put traditional windows in.
They had been, the comment was that they felt like they were squeezed in and taking up that space, and this way we have got much more stucco. We still are getting the light in, but it's just a more traditional way to do it with these small windows.
Okay.
And then the rest of the stuff you guys saw, we didn't update the finer details on these because these were really to show the mass, bulk, and scale. But on all of these renderings, we have updated everything to match the new changes to the windows. So if you want to look at sort of more 3D versions of the current refinements, you can see them on here.
Okay. That concludes your presentation? Okay. I'll open public comment. See no speaker slips, I'll close public comment and go to the commission for questions. How about Commissioner Schallenberger? Any questions?
Just one. So why even bother with the glass block? I mean, why not just have a panel of glass?
It's that's a zero lot line, so we have issues with how much of an opening we can have and how to get it fire rated along the zero lot line. So this allows us to set the glass back and use this very thick glass, which gets the rating.
Commissioner Sharp, any questions?
No.
Commissioner Rios, any questions? No. Commissioner Lavoie, any questions?
None.
Commissioner Mahan.
I have a question. I'm looking at this detail, right here, and it tells me, it shows a very sharp corner, and I'm wondering if this is typical of the whole building, that we have these very sharp corners, or are we going to have soft corners?
Question.
Commissioner Mahan, I think this is a detail which I think he intended to show you the inset, and maybe wasn't as focused on the actual corners. I don't think that we've got a really strong preference for either way. I think probably we would have soft corners over this building, and certainly include that in your motion.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Commissioner Murray, questions?
Yeah. So what style of windows are these? Are they casement or what? I mean, what's the, or are they even called out?
All of these windows
Yeah.
through the project, my understanding is they're casements. We don't have a full window schedule yet. We're just here for preliminary design, but these types of windows, they're swing out casement windows is what we think they're going to be. And then the real small ones would either be casements or fixed, I would guess.
Commissioner Winnick, any questions?
I don't.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Comments? Commissioner Schallenberger.
Just generally supportive comments. I think they've responded to all of our design concerns to date, and sending it on to staff hearing officer with positive comments.
Commissioner Arias.
Same comments.
Commissioner Lavoie.
Not the same comments. I don't know who or what this building wants to be yet. You're copying bits and pieces of one architect who's known to do a consistent, very odd design throughout his buildings, down to the knobs on the cabinets. And I see elements of him, I see elements of someone else, and I see elements of someone else. And it doesn't work as a hodgepodge. And that's what I see is sort of like it isn't a unified artistic expression. And that's what it desperately needs.
Commissioner Murray.
I do appreciate all the work you put in answering the questions, but I think Commissioner Lavoie's comments really say, don't just do what we tell you. I mean, we are coming and reacting to windows or something. Now that you've got the building, now you really have to work further to define that style clearly, and whether that's through the consistency of windows and style. Just something that you look at it and you say, yes, this is it. But that the comment, I think speaks to that. There's a nice simplicity about the building, which is really good, and I don't know. Anyway, I guess I'll let other commissioners make comments, but. Okay. Both size, bulk, and scale, fine. Everything is fine. That's that part, but there's just something. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Winnick.
Well, I think I'd want to pick up with Commissioner Schallenberg's statement of that this could be supported to go to Planning Commission for the modification. I still think that it needs to come back for more detail and refinement of the architecture I mean, it's consistent with the comment from last time that we did say it seems like there's a lot of different styles, and we'd like you to really hone in and be consistent. I think that work could still be done, but I'm very comfortable saying that this project's acceptable size, bulk, and scale, and should be, forward for its modification.
Commissioner Mahan.
Yeah, I agree with those comments. I think that well, first of all, getting back to this glass block detail, and it's referred to down here, and you say that's a detail that you found somewhere in I forget what you said it was, but I'm not familiar with that particular detail in El Pueblo Viejo. I'm very sure that it is not a traditional detail, and this is a thing that concerns me is the growing. Once something like that happens, then somebody else comes along and says, "Oh, look at, this happened here, so why can't I do it?" And then it grows. It's kind of like a malignancy, and I think you show a thing here and you show a couple of really traditional ways to handle openings in a wall, or where you're going to put glass block behind either the diamonds or the squares, and there's some others. And I think that this propeller, this elongated ellipse, is just not appropriate. And I don't, personally, I couldn't support repeating that again. I think a more traditional approach would be acceptable. And the same goes with the soft corners. I think a lot of this building just needs attention to what's appropriate in El Pueblo Viejo in terms of the softness and the tradition. I point out on the west elevation here, there's a little thin wall. There's a little thin wall, that all rhymes with thin, and it's too thin. Walls that stick out like that should be 14 inches thick or something like that. They shouldn't be that shouldn't be a 2x4 wall. Those little things like that, I think, Another thing is this a real chimney for a fireplace?
No.
Or that's just a false chimney?
It's a false chimney. It's for all the sewer pipes, etc., to come up.
No problem then. So I'll support moving this on for put where it needs to go, and then it can come back to us and we can massage it some more. And I think that I wanted to because it is it's a very creative design. It's very important that all of this creation, this creativity, it embraces El Pueblo Viejo. That's the thing. Thank you.
Commissioner Sharp.
Just one comment on the elevation that Bill was talking about, the west elevation. You see that fin. Well, the roof comes along going north, and then it appears that there's a plaster wall up to the ridge.
Yeah, it's right there. A little parapet there.
But here, on the north elevation, I see what appears just to be a gable. And I don't know where that tile
Because it screens it, see.
is. Anyway, it's no big deal, but...
Is there a roof plan?
Yeah, roof
Yeah,
plan.
do you have a roof
plan?
I
Or
think we can see it best on the floor plans, actually.
here.
So,
Oh, there's a roof plan. Here, second page.
So he's talking about this gable end here.
What page are you
A1.
He's talking about this.
on? Oh,
And he's also talking about how that
It
resolves.
goes into that.
right.
Let's let him tell.
We have a couple different things going on in there. You can see that this is this rectangle here, which continues down into the floor below it, and it's a light box. It's to allow natural light down into the side of the unit, which would be up against the zero lot line and has very little light coming to the wall. So I think it's the difference between which side of that light box you're looking at.
Right, okay. And the only other thing I have, it appears that the roof structure is too light. And too light meaning the rafters are really dinky and should be at least 6 by 6. They appear to be 2 by 3s here or something like that. It needs to be beefier.
Okay.
And you've shown 1 liter head on the east elevation, and there should be one over on the west elevation, unless you expect that water to travel 30 feet or so. Or maybe the south elevation. But other than that, I certainly agree it should go to the Planning Commission for the mods.
You mean the staff hearing officer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started that.
I was going to. Okay. All right.
I stand corrected.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Gantz.
before you summarize, just to let you know that we would need some statement saying that the proposed modifications are or are not aesthetically appropriate.
That's where we can use our cheat sheet.
Yep, and that they pose or do not pose consistency issues with the EPV guidelines. And then that's all we would need, and it would be forwarded, you would forward it to the staff hearing officer. That's what we would need today.
Okay, so everybody that's on this sheet.
The yellow one.
All right, so I'm going to summarize, and it seems that most of the HLC design concerns have been addressed. However, the architecture is not yet unified artistically and is not however, the architecture is not yet a unified artistic expression. Did you get that? Okay. The size, bulk, and scale seem to be appropriate. The elongated ellipse is not supportable. A more traditional opening should be proposed. Walls need to be thicker, particularly on the west elevation, where the end of the fin shows.
End of what?
end of the fin, F-I-N. Increase the dimensional size of the exposed rafters and pay attention to what the leader heads are doing and where they are placed. Is that right, Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
And then this seems to be ready to go to the staff hearing officer for its modifications. Do I have somebody that wants to make a motion to that effect?
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
Okay, so can we just work with just the last one, or do I have to list all of these?
You have to at least read into the motion that it meets the compatibility analysis
so
requirements.
The motion is to continue the project to the staff hearing officer for
Indefinitely
review.
or 2 weeks? Indefinitely.
I'm assuming
Just
indefinitely.
yeah.
And with generally favorable comments, and that one, that the project complies with city charter and municipal code general consistency with design guidelines, that the project is compatible, and remember this says generally met. The project is compatible with architectural character of the city and neighborhood, that is appropriate in size, mass, bulk, height, and scale, that it's sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources, that public views of the oceans and mountains, it's sensitive to that. It doesn't block any of those views, and that it has an appropriate amount of open space and landscaping.
And
I'm sorry. And the modifications recommendation to staff officer. The proposed modification is aesthetically appropriate. The proposed modification does not pose consistency issues with El Pueblo Viejo design guidelines or the neighborhood preservation ordinance. End quote.
So we have a motion by Winnick and a second by Mahan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Do you understand the motion?
Is it clear that it was modifications, plural? Because we have
You have more than one modification.
one of them is for open space, and other ones are for interior setbacks.
Unless our staff, is that clear?
That's correct.
Okay,
I thought you
we're
said
good.
mods,
Great.
but
Okay.
that's okay.
If I didn't, I did. How's that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did.
No abstentions or objections.
All right. The next item on the agenda
You guys can
is
take
item
one.
9, and remind the commission that we are 25 minutes
Actually, you
behind.
can take two.
This is 608 and 614 Chapala Street. This is the second concept review. The project requires environmental assessment and planning commission review. Project was last reviewed on December 4th, 2013, and I will read those. Okay, I'll try to do it fast.
Did you rename your firm? I said, did you rename your firm?
Design review. All right. 1, the commission appreciates the adaptive reuse of the building, identify the existing tree on the plans, add trees to the parking lot, explore restoring the corner of the front building at the northwest corner, screen the mechanical roof equipment, enhance the addition to the small building, look at improvements to the building holistically. Improvements must benefit the site long term, since changes to the building remain while the current tenant will not be permanent, may not be permanent. Use quality windows. The awning should not span over the pilasters. Consider changing the slope of the awning, eliminating the awning and its configuration. 2, the commission has reviewed the proposed project and compatibility analysis criteria and have found it generally met the project per SBMC 22.22.145.b and 22.68.045b as follows. I'm going to strike the as follows. So it remains that the commission has reviewed the project and the compatibility analysis have been generally met for this site. All right. The action was taken by Schallenberger, seconded by Drury. It passed with a 7-0-0 vote. Please introduce yourselves and give us a brief presentation.
Chairman Suding.
There you go.
My name is Kip Bradley, and we're the owner of the property.
Robin Donaldson, architect for the tenant.
And John Beecham, architect for the owner.
Great.
I'd like to just start by, first of all, thank you for the efforts that you put in previously. We are back before you as a result of collaboration with our incoming tenant and an effort to really bring the quality to the plan that we proposed to you previously. So as we sort of discussed before, our focus is more on the rear of the property. We aren't looking at the front, and really our intent is to leave that. But instead, we're very excited to be back in front of you because we have made some changes related to the use by the tenant and their interest to incorporate some of the outside areas and make it more open. We are definitely, I thought we were doing very high quality windows and appointments, but the tenant is taking that even higher. So without further ado, I'm going to have Robin and John explain to you the reason that we're here today. Thank you.
Robin or John?
In general, what you'll see on the elevations are the openings that you saw before.
The site plan, and then we'll go to the elevation.
Okay. The site plan itself still mirrors the same openings that you've seen previously. They're very close.
Sorry. Go ahead.
And the site plan itself is what you've seen before, with the exception of on the front, where we're seeing the front of the building here, this west face, we've shifted the parking down so that, as Robin will explain in a moment, there's more opportunity for employee use of this zone, if you will. So we still meet the parking requirements. We're still above minimums. But again, the area we're going to be looking at mostly is along these openings in here and how those have slightly changed.
Thanks, John. I'm representing the tenant, who is Sonos. And Sonos is I don't know if everybody here is familiar with Sonos, but they're basically
audio company.
Audio company, thank you. That not only makes hardware, audio hardware, but they also do software. And it's basically a tech company that's related to music. And they're a good-sized company, a quick, fast-growing tech company, and they have a commitment to staying in Santa Barbara, and they want to be in downtown Santa Barbara. So this commission may not be aware, but Sonos, as they're growing, is interested in growing into different buildings in downtown, on State Street, this building on Chapala, and in a sense are kind of creating almost, they look at it as kind of an urban campus. And with a series of buildings downtown, this particular building, from Sonos' standpoint, is their headquarter building. The executives and so on are going to be there. Now, as the architect for the tenant, I've been asked to take this building and turn it into essentially an office space, an office use for this company. I think most of you are familiar with the history of the building, obviously, as a car dealership and so on. Sonos is interested in the big bow truss open space in the middle of the building. They want to do an open plan, what I would call creative interior office space. And most of the companies that we're working with that are growing and are occupying space for the most part are these kinds of companies. They want open space. They like older buildings, warehouses, buildings like that. This building fits the bill. We're looking at not only the notion of occupying this as an open kind of creative office space, but we're also thinking of the parking area back in here, which is screened from the street by a building that's going to be added onto here. But we're looking at this area as being more than just a place to park cars, but also a place that could somehow facilitate almost like an outdoor kind of eating area, passive kind of resting area for the employees. They don't have much of this space downtown, as you might imagine. There aren't many open spaces downtown. As I think the commission is aware, there's a building that backs up against this piece of property here. They're basically looking at the back, a poured-in-place concrete wall that's back here on this side. We're going to enclose this covered kind of service bays that are there now. What we intend to do is to turn this into office space, open office space. And one of the things that we want to make sure is happening and want to enhance is the interior to exterior experience of this space. So we're going to be leaving the joists open in that space, and we want larger windows and more openable kind of indoor-outdoor experience. So in order to do that, we look back at kind of the original feel of the building or use of the building, in that it was a car repair shop at some point. And what we're looking at doing is taking into account the bays, the existing bays that run around the exterior of the building. And as John had originally shown the commission, we're going to be doing the same with windows, but we're going to bring them down to the ground and have them go about the same height. But we want them to be basically larger and almost read almost like, I guess I would call them doors, like larger sort of doors that might have been part and evocative of what might have been there originally. So we'll go to the elevations and let's see what I'm talking about. Oh, by the way, before we go, I just want to point out one. We're looking at having an entry door here. By the way, this wall here is the wall that's going to be built. We're looking at being an entry door, kind of one of the main doors for the employees. And we're looking at this door here and this door here being a door that could actually fold up and open up so that they have indoor-outdoor space from here. This is a big open area in here. So I want the commission to understand the intention of the use of the space. Also, we're looking at one of the doors over here opening up. Once we're talking about doors that have that ability to do that, then the other windows, we want to match it so it's got the same continuous feel.
So we're going to the elevations on HL6.
Let's go to the next page.
HLC5. Hold off until everybody gets there, please, Robin.
So the top elevation shows the existing building. Shows from here to here is the existing building. From here to here there's an existing little building here in the front. We have landscaping in the front. That's mainly what presents itself to the street, obviously. As you come onto the property and drive into the parking lot, you come between this area here, there's kind of this pilaster here, and you come back into the courtyard area back in here. So actually, as you come back, you go down to the next elevation. This is thank you. This area here is the elevation straight back, but more importantly, I want to point the commission's attention to this elevation here. This is the elevation that faces the west. This is that entry door that I was talking about. This door and this door are the two doors that we were talking about having the ability to open up and create this indoor-outdoor space. Also, the thought is that as that door opens, it kind of provides kind of a canopy piece up above. And then the rest of the doors and windows are intended to match. This one is also intended to open in this manner. One comment about the renovation of this building is that I think it's safe to say that the most likely use of this building in the future will be a use like what we're proposing now. Some kind of office, some kind of company, more likely some kind of technical or software company, the kind of companies that we see growing in the city right now. So we feel as though this kind of proposed idea of having a space that has this adaptability and openness is in keeping with where we think these types of buildings will be heading, these kind of warehouses and the kind of buildings that can have this dual use. So we're also aware that we're in the HLC area. We would like to do these doors in a wood. We want to soften up the feel of them. They have a metal frame behind them that's only seen from the interior that actually provides the structure for the openable ones and the three openable ones. The rest of them will be essentially like a wood, like a Douglas fir kind of storefront kind of assembly, and have that be consistent around the interior of the space. And also on the site plan, just wanted to add, we're looking at putting planters, movable planters in addition to the planters that are being built to provide more green space and so on inside that courtyard. That's kind of and frankly, from Sonos' standpoint, we see this as being an area that we kind of, it's part of the company's. It's kind of almost like a private plaza in a sense in the city. So I think that's my main points.
Okay. That concludes your presentation?
Yes.
All right, then I'll open it for public comment. Seeing no public, I'll close public comment and bring it to the commission. We'll start with Commissioner Sharp. Any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Mahan.
Is this an existing awning? Is that there now?
Yeah, Commissioner Mahan, that's existing. We're proposing replacing it.
Yeah, but it's existing as a canvas awning?
Yes.
And is this this parapet? This is a tiled parapet. Are these tiled parapets up here?
That's existing.
They're existing too.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Winnick, questions?
Yeah. The first question is, if you Mr. Donaldson, weren't here, but the others were. The commission probably spent the most time last time talking about the awning on the front of the building, and I know that the proposed project is the back of the building. But the commission spent its time on the front of the building. Okay, so for this area. So I just would like to know, you guys haven't addressed any of those comments that were made regarding the front. And so I'm trying not to make it a comment. What I'd like to do is just ask the question why those comments weren't addressed.
Well, from Sonos' standpoint, we leased the building assuming the building was as is. Mm-hmm. And obviously, we're interested in addressing what we know is going to change. Mm-hmm. And the awning is obviously a concern just from a maintenance standpoint. So that's our focus at this point.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other comment that I would throw back to you is that we did have a conversation, too, about how what we're focusing on is the rear portion of the property, and we aren't really even doing anything out front other than, I guess, maintenance, because it's now a blue awning that says Sammy's on it,
right.
And it'll just simply be replaced like for like with a different color. Mm. So there really wasn't any change that was anticipated for that.
Yeah, I was trying not to, maybe I should have just brought this up in comments, but I guess I feel I should at least comment back. I think at the time of the discourse that happened here last time was, well, this is a project where a modification is being requested, so it's an opportunity to, you're basically asking for some sort of accommodation to be made, and the commission was saying, well, there's something on this building, it's a very nice building, but the awning is out of character with the rest of the building, so how about maybe eliminating the awning or at least stopping it from going around the corner that was round. It was sort of like, this is the chance to do that since you're doing a major renovation. Anyway, we can come back to comments, but
sure.
It seemed unaddressed. The other question I have is just simply, it's about the door material. If you weren't in El Pueblo Viejo, would you propose these as wood doors, or would you propose them as metal doors?
I would propose them as wood. I like the wood. I like the feel of it.
All right. Great. Thanks.
Commissioner Murray.
No,
questions?
I thought my questions have been answered. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Lavoie?
No questions.
Commissioner Marias?
No questions.
Commissioner Schallenberger? All right, comments. Let's start with Commissioner Sharp. Any comments?
Well, it's an ambitious undertaking, first of all, and I'm glad to see it put to a creative use. My only concerns are the requirements of being in EPV and how we can justify breaking away from our normal requirements of the district, Hispanic architecture and so forth. And personally feel that this is an improvable project, but I would have to give it a little more thought. and listen to what anybody else would have to say.
Fair enough. Commissioner Mahan.
I'd like to point out that I've reviewed these minutes and the video.
Thank you for doing that.
This, by the way, is where I bought my first Chevrolet C&H in 1962.
All right.
1962, $3,000, the top of the line.
All right.
Nothing but the best.
Go for going for it.
Hardtop convertible, two-tone.
Cool.
It's a lot of money.
I have this. I like the project actually. I think it's it looks good, but it's just, I have the same comment that I made to the last applicant in the when we get away from the traditional solutions in doors and windows, etc. This is a creeping thing that happens, and I don't see why we can't have the glass and have the openness and still have the proportions and everything be more appropriate to El Pueblo Viejo. I have observed that I put in my house, I put doors with glass right down to the floor like this, and I've observed that nobody looks down through that at the floor or at this pavement outside. And wood panels at the bottom might be a way to introduce something that would be more traditional. I think the proportions need to be more traditional, but generally speaking, I think it's a great reuse of the building, and the awning. I was trying to remember if the awning was there back in the old days, but it's been there for a really long time, and I don't know how you would, except for you might interrupt it there because there isn't any reason to have an awning where you have a wall. You might, there might be a little interruption there. Or there's some. I think if you're going to do a new awning, there's an opportunity to make it more appropriate to El Pueblo Viejo and save a little canvas, and also gives you and I would presume that the hardware will be traditional in some sort of a traditional form, and so you get to see that more than once or twice. And I think that would be an improvement along the Chapala Street elevation. Generally, I like the idea of reusing the building in this way. Thank you.
Mr. Winnick.
Okay. Contrary to what it might have sounded like before, I very much support this project. I just would like to see it go further on the streetscape. I see this kind of as a bridge building. I know we're in El Pueblo Viejo, but this is a building that has a little bit of an Art Deco influence, and it's got that streamlined feeling that it comes from the automobile era. And I think to have these windows and doors that are on the inside courtyard of the building, consistent with what you would find in sort of an automotive era building, I think works. And I also, like, for instance, I think I understand why the glass goes all the way down to the ground, because when those doors open and they act as canopies overhead, it'll be really a nice effect to have it be consistent as glass all the way across it. So I understand the design aesthetic behind it, and I think it makes sense. And I think given that we know what this building is, it's not setting up a precedent for other places in El Pueblo Viejo where you have more of a masonry building and it's on the street. This is internal. It's almost like inside the building. It just happens to be in the building courtyard. So I think that the fenestration that's proposed back there works. I do think maybe the proportions could be studied. That's fine. We could always take a look at that. But I think the overall concept makes sense. It is very supportable. I think the canopy at the street is still unfortunate, and I understand that it's not part of the initial brief on the project, but I think it's a chance to really make this building a nicer building, to improve something that was done wrong along the way, in my opinion. That could be greatly improved. In fact, last time we were looking at photographs, which are not on the table right now, and Commissioner Schallenberg really pointed out, again, what Commissioner Mahan talked about, was that it doesn't seem to make sense that the canopy bridges that masonry pier, and perhaps maybe it doesn't even want to be on that portion of building. So, I would really like you to study the canopy.
Commissioner Murray.
I echo statements about the canopy, because that was, I remember that was a big discussion last time, and you are doing enough changes to this building, and it's always an opportunity whenever a wonderful big prosperous company coming in. It's a really good thing to really bring the style of the building back to its wonderful expression, and all the good things you're adding in the back. If that was addressed, this canopy, I think it will really, a headquarters for this headquarter building you said for the company. It will be a headquarter looking without that canopy. So it's really, it's bringing that beauty of that building back, which was really kind of diminished by this awning, which was added later on. It was not original, and so I would still look forward for that to be part of the project.
Commissioner Lavoie?
I agree with all of the previous conflicting comments. I'm looking at this building, and you heard me say to someone else before, I don't think this building has found its soul yet. I don't think it has decided what it wants to be yet. While I very much like the proposed doors, they don't fit the guidelines. While I very much hate this awning, it doesn't fit the guidelines. The front windows don't fit the guidelines, the existing windows that you're not proposing to change. So you need to find what this building wants to be, and if you want it to have a more modernist expression, then you need to be consistent all the way around. But it still needs to fit the guidelines. Rather than sit here and draw it for you, it's about the proportion of the piece of glass, that it should be more vertical than horizontal, that you don't have great swaths of glass like you do on the street facade, that you don't have continuous awnings that go on forever. I mean, they should be no wider than even 8 feet a stretch. Or take it off. Just see what it looks like off the building. Rather than replace it, just take it off, and the cheap probably frame that's underneath it. I'm sure there's not great iron under there at all. And see what the building looks like. I mean, you might be happier with it. I think as a concept of how you're reusing and adapting this building, that I wholly support that idea. I just think the architectural expression needs to be refined and bring it back into the district just a little bit more. Not a whole lot more, but just a little bit more, and edit one more time.
Commissioner Rios?
Well, I agree with what Mr. Lavoie said, and also we had talked about landscaping in the parking lot, and that I would like to see upgraded to city standards and all. But I am concerned that this is going to come back to haunt us and say, well, you approved it and it's in El Pueblo Viejo. So I would like to see a further study, and I agree with what Mr. Lavoie said.
Commissioner Schallenberger.
Just Commissioner Lavoie's comments actually brought up a question. What else is being proposed to the Chapala Street facade as far as, is there plaster, spall patching, and paint? And I mean, are you going to paint the building, for example? Or what else is proposed?
We're not proposing to paint the building at this point.
But you are proposing to replace the fabric of the awning?
No.
That's part of this
Oh, yeah,
proposal?
yeah. Excuse me.
Okay. Okay, I mean, I just, as far as going on a planning commission, it's fine, it's fine. There's, I do think you've got some work to do to get project design approval, though, and then ultimately final, but, I mean, we're here to talk about a concept review and moving on to planning commission, so I don't think there's any holdup there. But, so I would just echo the previous comments and say, I think it's ready to go on to planning commission.
I'm going to go back to a question that I didn't ask, but what's happening to the small building? You came last time, you proposed some. What have you done to enhance that?
We, at this stage, we have not made any changes to that original proposal, that
Why
original
not?
concept. Honestly, we were focused so much on the interior.
Okay, you were asked to.
We were asked to give it some romance, and that was the terminology we had took with us. We feel like that this little front element really, anything else almost detracts from it. We feel like this, the proportions here, the style, everything we've done is as a background to it.
Okay, well
so
then
we're not
don't say
making
that you
changes.
were focused on other things. Tell us that you don't feel that you agree with us. Don't waste our time.
Oh. No
Okay.
intent with that.
We won't waste your time.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to summarize the comments made so far. I don't even know where to begin.
Chair Sudi?
Yes.
Kelly Broadison, Assistant Planner. I just wanted to say that this project will be going, as you know, to Planning Commission for a development plan for the commercial square footage. And at the last time that the project was before the commission, you did make the findings, or you conducted a compatibility analysis, and now the owner is now working with the tenant. Obviously, the tenant has some different desires for the building, and I think the owner is kind of meshing with the tenant to try to get those desires met. And I also wanted to just remind you that we did look at the front entry and the parapet at the last meeting, and I brought up that it was approved by the HLC in 1986, and I think you discussed that as a kind of a quandary for the commission as far as how do you ask them to change something now that was technically approved by this commission or a previous commission. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a thought in your comments.
Does somebody want to make a motion?
Did you want to summarize?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Lavoie.
I'd like to see this in 2 weeks. I think we can forward it on to the Planning Commission that the land use issues and adaptive reuse of this building are supportable, but that the architecture really needs to be brought closer to HLC guidelines.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
I'll second it.
We had a motion by Lavoie, a second by Arias. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. You understand the motion?
We're free to go to push on to
Right.
Planning Commission.
Right.
That's important.
That was an indefinite continuance.
Yes.
Well, I'd like
said
to
2 weeks.
see the design in 2 weeks while it's going to Planning Commission.
Can we
Yeah,
do that?
okay.
You want to let me do that?
No,
That's a
Ms.
separate
Gantz, would you
motion.
please respond?
Chair Suding and Commissioner Lavoie, they will be submitting for a DART application, development application review, and this project has at least 30 days before it will be deemed complete and sent to Planning Commission. So if you want an in-progress review before it goes to Planning Commission, that's different than indefinite continuance to Planning Commission. Either way is fine with me, I just want to make
Well,
sure.
I'd like to see it in 2 weeks, but I would like it to proceed to the Planning Commission. That was the intent of the motion. Yes.
Well, wait a
As
second.
long as you can begin the DART process and, okay, great.
Do we need to
2 weeks.
clean that up?
2 weeks.
Staff is okay with it.
Okay. Okay, so in progress concept. You guys can
You're
take one
you're
of
okay
these.
with that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Thanks,
Okay.
Skip.
Yeah, I see all three of you outside. Mr. Winnick, will you start?
Sure. Hi.
This will be easier, I hope.
Does this give us a second, okay?
No. We can see.
Could I go? Could you pass it down to see us? No audience? Okay, that's great. Let me find the item. I got to find my agenda.
There's two of them for 10.
Yes, thanks. Somehow it got taken away.
There you go.
No, it's on the floor. Thanks. Let's go.
There are pictures.
How are these different from what was submitted?
It's the same.
It's exactly the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We're here on HLC item number 10, 9 West Haley Street. Please introduce yourselves and make your presentation.
Brian Cornell and Rogelio Solis. By way of information.
Sorry.
Oh.
I only have one sheet, though.
Oh, this is just for
This,
reference.
I just have this as reference.
That's the 419, the actual.
We are here over this parking lot because we came to you before and we got these openings approved to create ramp access from this parking lot to 419 State Street, which is, do you have those other photos? It's this building. Here on State Street. And we did an addition to this building back in 89. So,
Stop moving it. I was trying to get it in one spot.
so here's the issue. We were simply making that connection to this parking lot, which is back behind off of Haley. Let me get my orientation here.
So here's Haley.
Correct, there we go. So there's an alleyway here that connects, the Ablett's building is right here, Virginia Hotel is here, and then this is 419 State Street on that connection. Staff said, well, you can't just use that parking lot because we really don't have any record of it being a parking lot. This is what it is. So actually, let me take you through all these photographs quickly. That's the view. Right there? Okay, good. So here is the alleyway going back. So this is looking from Haley. That's as you get to the end of the alley, the corner of the Ablett's building, and then the 419 State Street where we're doing this new openings. And then this is looking more or less to the south into the parking lot. So you got the Virginia Hotel on one side, you got Ablett's Cleaners on the other, and then this is another view of that, so you can see there's some landscaping on both sides. In fact, this shows there's a hedgerow between the Ablett's Cleaners and this parking lot. So staff doesn't have a record of this being a parking lot. Apparently is last permitted as auto repair. So we are here to get a parking lot approved with as little pain and suffering as possible, because the owner, of course, assumed that they were not going to be doing anything to this at all. Here's the accessible stall which goes to the ramp, which connects to 419 State Street. There's Ablett's, Virginia Hotel. The width here is 57 feet, so we have to do extra wide spaces for maneuvering purposes. We're proposing just one island on this side, which is placed so that it becomes a nice little backdrop off of the Virginia Hotel wall, which is pretty much blank here. And we're proposing to add a little pocket for Giant Bird of Paradise in this location, and then to do sort of a semi-island in order to maximize the spaces here with a king palm, and hoping that the remainder of the landscape requirements that you would typically see could be waived, since this historically has really served as parking forever and is not visible from anywhere. I will mention that staff, transportation staff, is questioning whether this in fact is a 20-foot alley, because there have been some improvements along here. If they determine that it's not a 20-foot alley and is only or is less than 20 feet, then they're only going to allow us to have 23 spaces in this parking lot instead of the 25 that we show. And if that is the case, then what we would probably do is go ahead and make a finger planter here and make the spaces a little wider for maneuvering purposes and still basically propose what we're showing.
And I would just add to that technically it's 24 spaces, but because they have exterior outside parking for this blitz housing, then it leaves us with 23 total stalls there.
24, 25.
This is a blitz.
Is this compact labeled meant to be here?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
just
Very
wanted
good.
to be sure.
It just shows he's paying attention.
Now you're in trouble.
Okay, we'll accept that change.
All right, anything else? Did you conclude your?
No, that's it.
Okay. Any staff comments? No. Okay.
If you need those.
We got them.
I think he's shared those with us.
Mr. Chair, just quickly,
Ms. Gantz, go ahead.
if the HLC can find that the 27-space lot is supportable, then we would just ask you to also make sure that you could find a 23-space lot with the one Ablet spot for a total of 24 supportable, if indeed they do have to lower it in the building permit process, the number. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open public comment. I have no speaker slips, so I'll close public comment. Bring it to the commission. Commissioner Schellenberger, do you have any questions? Commissioner LeVoy, any questions?
Where's the trash enclosure?
The trash for 419 is over off of this alley. You can actually see it here on the site plan.
Okay.
So again, this is really, and ironically, by the way, Sonos is occupying this building. So this is extra above required parking. All the required parking for this building is on that parcel.
With this. Okay.
That was it.
Commissioner Murray, any questions?
So you have 23 or?
No, I have 20. Well, we have 25 within the gate, which what we got approved from you all is the gate and the openings and the ramp and all of that. These are additional spaces that would go away. Those number 26 and 27, assuming that staff insists on the reduced number of spaces.
So you got 23?
25.
25.
I have 25 inside the gate. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Commissioner Winnick?
No questions.
Commissioner Mahan?
No question.
Commissioner Sharp. All right. How about comments, Commissioner Sharp? Comments?
I have no comment.
Okay. Commissioner Mahan?
I find it approvable.
Commissioner Winnick?
I can support the project in either number of parking spaces, but in the reduced number of parking spaces, I would support having the extra planting. It'd be nice.
Commissioner Murray?
Nothing to add to those comments, meaning I agree.
Commissioner LeVoy?
I agree, nothing to add.
Commissioner Schellenberger? Okay. I'm going to say ditto, too. I mean, I would rather have fewer parking spaces and that finger back there. I can support it in either configuration. So, Commissioner Winnick, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that does this have to go somewhere else? We're good?
No, it doesn't. You can give it PDA,
PDA.
and
Final
final
approval.
and include a comment that a lower number of parking
Right.
spaces would also be supportable.
Okay.
Hold on, before you do that, we would need sizes of plant material and a note about irrigation on the plans.
Can we give it PDA with it coming back to consent
Sure.
to pick up
Or
those
final-
items?
Yeah, because we're going to have to, if we have to revise the plan, so that's.
Yeah,
Can you
you
give
need
it
sizes of your material and irrigation.
Okay, so project design approval with coming back on consent to review the irrigation and sizes of planting materials. And the project is approvable or has PDA as submitted, and also would have PDA if it has to, because of the building department requirements, if it comes back with fewer parking spaces. And in that case, it would have an additional finger planting and more planting in general, finger planting island. Okay.
Did you get that, Ms. Feliciano?
So the part where the parking, what does that have to do with the parking spaces?
If the building department determines that the parking spaces need to be fewer, the commission supports that as well as what's proposed. with the condition that the fewer parking spaces would add more landscaping.
And does the applicant wish a 2-week continuance to consent or indefinite?
2 weeks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. A motion by Winnick, a second by?
Second?
By Sharp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Abstained? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Meeting
See you
adjourned.
soon. Drive safely, Bill.
I will.
Key fish?